Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I hope you guys are doing all right. My name is Jamal Thomas, and this is indeed, there we are. This is indeed my show. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for being here. And under the sound of this voice, you could be anywhere. And the fact that you have found yourself here with this family, you have my deepest appreciation for doing so. A lot of news on the marquee, actually, and we have a damn good show for you today. So we're going to start off with Jerry Gray. He is going to talk about China's crackdown on the U.S. chips. And that sounds wild, right? China is effectively cracking down on chips coming from NVIDIA, coming from the United States. They don't trust them. And because of the moves that the United States have made trying to restrict China's AI chips, etc., China has now made their own, in which case they look at the U.S. trips with skepticism. There's that. He's also going to go into the TikTok issue. He's making the point of saying that that news has been somewhat grossly misreported coming out of the West. We'll see. I mean, from my understanding, Joe Biden passed a law that forced China to have no more than 20% in the company. So regardless of what their intake was initially, that amount has dropped to 20%. A bunch of Zionist, lunatic, pro-genocide goons are effectively going to get their hands on the company. And obviously, this was something that they were lusting over because they wanted to effectively tamp down on the reality that is coming out of Israel. Mind you, a reality by many of their own soldiers who gleefully murder Palestinians and who kill, shoot, maim, rape, starving human beings. And at this point, this is not my point of view. The UN report makes it very clear what Israel is doing is a genocide. Full stop. Drop the mic. This is not conjecture. This is what it is. It is going to be very interesting on whether or not the ICJ effectively uses the report coming out of the United Nations to piggyback, making the same point of genocide. This is probably also why Netanyahu gave some jittery speech where he was talking about Israel needing to be self-sufficient and getting its own weapons industry and everything else. Okay. Let's just be clear, though. You're a genocidal monster, head of a country of rabid, the closest thing to Nazis in our time frame. And yet the capitalistic system continues. It continues. I've learned a lot, by the way. I think all of us had a wrong assessment of history at the end of the Second World War. And we came with this assessment of, quote, never again. We will never, as humanity, let this happen again. Not individual nations, meaning not, well, the United States is assisting this and help doing this, and so it's the United States' responsibility to, well, you can make that argument about Germany, right? Well, Germany was the one that was committing the genocide, so it's up to Germans to stop the German population from committing genocide. That was never going to happen. Never going to happen. Full stop. It took external actors to impart cost on Germany in order to get them to stop. The thing that we got wrong, though, is that we believed that on some level, well, yeah, it's a genocide. Obviously, that's bad. They were putting people in ovens. They were murdering, raping, etc. This was horrible. They were starving people. Look at the ghostly skeletons of Jews as they were being executed by the German war machine as they worked them literally to death and then put them in ovens at the point where their life came to the end. We looked at that and said, well, that is obviously outrageous. Fascist governments that are doing this cannot be allowed to do this. Full stop. And the lesson from the Second World War is that as a world, not as an individual country here or there, as a world, this is unacceptable. And so anybody that was working with Hitler, companies and everything else externally are looked at in a certain light, a poor light, right? What does it mean if you were one of those companies that was working with Hitler as they were prosecuting and murdering Jews? What does it mean when you were looking at Hitler as he was murdering Poles, Russians, etc.? How do we look at companies today that were arm in arm with the Hitlerian war machine? We look at them poorly. But that's a poor lesson. The reality of it is, and a better lesson of it, is that for all intents and purposes, the only reason the world cared is because the world was at war. And if the world wasn't at war, the world would not have cared. We got that lesson wrong. My guest is here, though. I don't want to bring him on. I don't like my guests to wait. We are joined. Let me bring him on. There you are.
Here I am.
There you are. We're joined with Jerry Gray. Jerry Gray is host of Jerry's Take on China. He has lived in China for more than 20 years, and he has traveled more than 30,000 kilometers on a bicycle across the country. I put that in because I find that to be an amazing factoid. How you doing, Jerry? You doing okay tonight?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the invite again. It's always good to come on your show.
Well, it's always good to have you, man. I always appreciate these conversations, and I always learn something in these conversations. I guess we have to start with TikTok, since that's the thing that's probably the highest item on the marquee. So, from my understanding, the Biden administration passed the law that said that TikTok needed to divest from China to the tune of 20%, meaning China couldn't own more than 20% of the company. Mm-hmm. Trump administration comes in, and a lot of back and forth, a lot of loud words, but for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump is going to have people like Larry Ellison, some of these other corporations, to take the 80%.
Yep.
And China will continue to get the 20%. And this deal is supposed to take place at the very least before the end of the year. Trump has given another extension on it while the negotiations take place. Now, your point was in the email that this is being grossly misreported. Mm-hmm. How is this being misreported? Did I say anything wrong in my explanation of this? Because from my point of view,
your explanation is fine. No problem with your explanation at all.
Because what they want to do is change it, from my understanding.
Let's backtrack a little bit. First of all, in America, this is known as the TikTok ban. This is not a ban of TikTok. What this is any app, any channel, any group of people online, any online platform that the president deems to be a threat to national security can be taken down. TikTok is just the one that they're aiming for. So fundamentally, what we have here is not a TikTok ban at all. This is exactly what they accuse China of. China has banned all of our apps. Well, that's not actually true. China has never banned any of them. There's a couple that, for whatever reason, have now been banned. But effectively, all of these groups, the Googles, the Alphabets, the Metas, all of them do not operate in China, although many of them have a presence in China. Microsoft has a huge presence. Google has a huge presence. They operate in China, but they operate under Chinese laws. And Chinese laws say that they must store their data inside of China. They must allow access for police investigations using court orders. They must not harvest or profit from any of the data that is registered as private data. And that is something they refuse to accept, because if you think about it, why is YouTube free? It's free because they are taking all of our data, scraping it away, selling it to all different people so they can target advertisers. And that is what China has forbidden. Can't be done. It can be done with my permission expressly. I give my permission for you to use, but of course it can't be done legally. The European Union are trying to do this, and groups like Facebook or Meta are suggesting they're going to pull out. So that's the first thing. This is not a TikTok ban. The second thing is that if anybody approaches a VPN to get into any of these banned sites, then they commit a very large offense. So VPNs are illegal, effectively, to access these. So that's the two things that American people don't seem to realize. When you read the document, when you read the legislation, it's not about TikTok at all. It's about any platform that the president deems to be a threat to national security. The second thing is that if you do access one of those through a VPN, both you and the VPN commit an offense. So VPNs are going to block you from this. And this is, again, exactly what they try to assert that China does. China doesn't do this. China has no laws about this. There are no VPN. There are VPN restrictions, but there's not a ban on VPN. There's not a ban on TikTok. There's not a ban on Facebook or YouTube or Google or any of these things. What these companies choose not to do is operate inside of China under China's laws. So that's the first thing that's wrong about this. The second thing is that it's being reported here in China that the parent company, Douyin, are going to keep the algorithm. A new algorithm will be issued for the American market. So America will have a different algorithm. So effectively, what you're going to get in America is controlled American propaganda. Whereas if I access it through a VPN, can have anything on TikTok as long as I'm not accessing it through an American VPN server.
Yes.
So if I go to Australia, I can watch it. If I go to Vietnam, I can watch it. If anywhere in the world that is not America, I can watch the global TikTok that is not the American TikTok. So when people say this is a win for America, this is not a win at all. Douyin has made a lot, or is going to make a lot of money. They're going to keep control of the most important aspect of this, which is their own algorithm. And that's exactly what these corporations and people like Zuckerberg in Meta wanted. They wanted access to all of the algorithms, which they don't know how it works. It's much better than anything they've got. So TikTok has an algorithm that is pretty good, and they want that, and they're not getting it. They're getting an American algorithm, a separate algorithm just for America. So Americans are getting shortchanged here, and that's really what it boils down to. It's not a win for America. By the way, do you know what Biden did? When the law was passed, Biden put a stay on it and said, I'm going to leave this decision to my successor, whoever my successor will be, because he wanted to kick that can down the road before the election. No president is going to ban TikTok before an election. That is why they can't do it, because 100 million Americans are using TikTok, making money from TikTok. A lot of them are making money from TikTok. It's a huge business opportunity for many, mostly young people, and many of them of an age where they will vote. And if a president says, I'm going to do this differently, they might vote for that president. But if a president were to have banned it before the election, not a chance of getting a win from the potentially 100 million voters, young voters, mostly young voters. Most of the people on TikTok, except for me, I'm on TikTok, are young.
So just to be clear, among the investors, which are expected to be roughly 80% of the TikTok, the Chinese shareholders will remain the rest. You have Oracle, Andreessen Horowitz, and Silver Lake, this was said. All of these people are Zionists, hardcore Zionists. And let's be clear, Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADF, not the ADF, American Defamation League, ADL, pointed out that we need to get our hands on TikTok. He was very clear. We need to capture TikTok. And part
a lot of people want to capture TikTok, and now they've got an American TikTok. It's as simple as that. Europeans are not going to be watching the same TikTok. Chinese people are not watching. We already have a different thing. It's called Douyin, which is the parent company. And Douyin is great. It's full of mathematical science. It's full of entertainment. It's got lots of dancing. There's nothing. There's nothing political on TikTok, and there shouldn't be. There's nothing pornographic, and I don't think there is in the American version either. I'm not certain of that. There's nothing seditious. You can't be insulting. These are the laws that they have in China, and our TikTok is nice, clean, healthy, fun. And it is quite fun. You scroll through it, it's harmless fun. And that's what it ought to be. It's social media. It's not meant to be news. It's not meant to be hard-hitting and cutting edge. If you want to do that, you should be able to get that from your media. But obviously nowadays we don't. So we go to places like X and a couple of other things. But yeah, generally speaking, we get our news from alternative sources now. And TikTok should never have been a news site. It's for dancing, singing, pulling pranks. And in China, it's actually really, really educational.
Well, that's the rub, though. The videos that were uploaded to TikTok were showing the reality of what was taking place on the ground in Gaza. Yeah. Many of those videos were uploaded by Israelis themselves, meaning them dancing and taking glee and murdering babies. Yeah. And so the ADL, his issue was, we need to get our hands on this because we believe that this is affecting the point of view of Americans in regards to Israel and the war itself. So their take of this, it wasn't that they cared so much about TikTok. Their thing was, too much of this content is giving Americans an impression of the reality of what's taking place on the ground. We don't like that, and we need to somehow control that. And so the people who are getting their hands on it are people who don't. Ellison donated more than $10 million to the IDF to put it in perspective. So these are the people who are going to be managing it. And to back up your other point, all of these people are directly involved in the deep state, quote unquote, as they call it in the United States, meaning the military industrial complex.
Yep.
They are going to just turn it into a propaganda outlet. That's all it's going to be.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you want, because it won't be banned, if you want to use a VPN, you can. Now, one of the interesting things is the number of, there's a survey being put out on the number of inquiries about how to get a VPN. And America is by far and away the largest number of inquiries into how to get a VPN. But here's another thing. Most of your VPNs, not all, but most of them are owned by Zionists. They're owned by Israel. ExpressVPN, which is probably one of the biggest, has just sold out to an Israeli company. So it was already partially Israeli owned, but it's sold out to an Israeli company. So there's a lot of different, I don't know who owns all of them. I use a VPN all the time. And I'll be quite honest, I don't really care that someone's tracking me or anything like that, because I'm not doing anything I shouldn't. And the Chinese government don't care about what I'm doing. So I've never had a problem. There's a lot of police here who know that I operate as a YouTuber. I was just in the immigration department yesterday. What do you do for a living? I'm retired. Oh, do you have any income? I get a little bit from YouTube. That's it. Oh, you've got a YouTube channel? Yeah. So we chatted about that. They know I can't have a YouTube channel without a VPN. I'm not breaking any laws here. They're not really fussed about that. So again, Americans are misinformed about what's really happening on the ground in China. And now they've been misinformed about what's happening in their own Congress. They're misinformed about what's happening in their own trade delegations. The trade delegations, a lot of people are saying, this is a quid pro quo and China's going to get something from Trump. Well, maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I don't think they will. What Trump really, really wants is rare earth elements. He wants China to de-restrict the rare earth elements. And I can promise you, with my hand on my heart, and put it on a Bible or a Quran or whatever anybody wants me to do, this is not going to happen. China has written laws that say these are controlled. This is like drugs. China does not export fentanyl precursors to America. China exports only under controlled and restricted conditions. So if the American people are buying this, they're not buying it legally from China. This is another misinformation thing that's being put about by the American media and American politicians. China has done more than any other country to control the sale of fentanyl and fentanyl precursors, more than any other country, including the United States of America. So what's happened now is the same with rare earths. They have controlled rare earths and they're only sold for the purposes of peaceful development. So no military industrial complex organization can buy them. And they've also set up a new department inside of China with several hundred employees that are managing every single export of rare earths. So these rare earths are now going to the sort of people that need them, such as medical equipment manufacturers, battery manufacturers, the people who are making stuff. And it's being done very, very controlled way. It can only be sold if the end user has a certification. So the end user needs to produce proof that they used what they got in the products that they get before they can get any more. So that's going to be, it already is in place. China is not going to suddenly say, oh, well, we're going to relax rare earths for you. America now needs to find a new source of rare earths outside of China for its military. All the medical equipment can still have rare earths.
Well, that's a rational act. I mean, when you get the United States, it's a rational act. When you get the United States looking at the Philippines, Japan, Australia, saying, hey, are you ready to die for the dignity of America? Are you willing to do that? Because for all intents and purposes, they were talking about this Asian pivot with this idea of some kind of military confrontation with China. Why on earth would China give them the means to have military conflict with that same China? It makes no sense, right?
All of these things were going into weapons that are now pointing at China,
Exactly.
It's as simple as that. The pivot to Asia started around about 2015, 2017. It really confirmed. But 2015, Obama started it, and it's been going every single year since then. It goes up and it goes down. Right now, it's in a phase where it's up. I see things from Washington, from ASPI in Australia. I'm reading the news and seeing AUKUS is AUKUS all the time. And this is the Australian submarine deal. which is a very bad deal for Australia. In a bad deal in every sense, not just in the defense sense, but in every sense of the word. This is basically Australia paying for the submarine core of the United States over the next 10 or 12 years. It's really, really bad.
Yeah. And it screwed over the French also. Yeah, that's a whole other.
Yeah, well, that was another thing. The French actually did quite well out of it because they started the work on, I think, 6 submarines, which were going to replace the Australian Collins-class submarines. They were non-nuclear. They were shallow water. They're basically not attack submarines. So the French had a deal, and they were going forward with this. And then in order to get out of the deal, Australians had to pay, I think, $6 billion. And then the French have got these partially completed submarines that they can put out on the open market. Anyone want a submarine? We've got some here. So they'll sell them again. They'll do all right out of it, I think. I don't think the French were really that upset. They made a show of being upset, but I don't think they were really upset.
Yeah, they made us think about it. They definitely made us think about it.
They got what they wanted out of it. Basically, you break a contract, you pay a clause, you pay a penalty. There was a penalty clause in there. Australia had to pay $6 billion for something they never got. So it's a lot of money. The French companies have got submarines partially completed and $6 billion in the bank. So I think they did all right.
Yeah, the Asian pivot was Obama's baby. This idea of diversification of resources, or we're going to have the Europeans deal with the Russians. We're going to have Israel deal with Iranians in the Middle East, and we're going to pivot to Asia. And we haven't necessarily been able to make that pivot. And it's wild because in every war game scenario, we lose. And so it seems like what the U.S. wants is we need someone to suck up the missiles that are going to come raining down if we indeed try to attack China or provoke China. So Australia, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Philippines, etc. We need you to do that. We need you to be our proxies in that region. And I keep thinking to myself, why on earth do they think Ukraine is a good model for them? And yet it's a question mark on whether these countries would actually be that stupid to get into some kind of war in that sense. So
I'm not sure that it's stupid. If we go to war, it will get ugly. Benny Hill just said that, which is not unfair statement. It's going to get very, very ugly. China is not going on an aggressive war. China is not going to take over anything. It's not even going to take over Taiwan. It already owns Taiwan, and all it's doing is waiting until the politics settle down. Now, China will defend Taiwan. We've discussed this before, and they've made this very clear. They will defend their property. They're going to defend Hong Kong. They're going to defend Macau. They're going to defend Taiwan. They're defending Xinjiang and Xinjiang, Tibet. So they're really defending their own borders and sovereignty and nothing more than that. That's what China is interested in doing. That's why they had the big military parade a couple of weeks ago. And it was a beautiful parade. I watched it. I did a live stream from it. And that got canned by CCTV, but never mind. The whole thing was a great experience to do that, and it was a great experience to watch that. And that is what really is important. What China is doing is saying, look at us, look at what we've got. And people are looking at this and going, wow. But what they're not showing is what they've really got. They're in the 6th generation of fighter jets, and they're only showing the 5th generation. So stuff like that, it really does exist, and it is in China. It's not a PowerPoint presentation or a cartoon drawing. It's not an animation. China has got the stuff they need. Now, I think Australia is fairly safe. Australia is fairly safe. I think it's fairly safe because there's only 3 sites in Australia that China would even think about hitting, and probably only one that they would really want to hit, and that's Pine Gap. It's right in the middle of Australia. It's full of Americans, and they're all intelligence. It is the most important strategic site outside of the United States. It's the second most important intelligence gathering site in the world for the Americans. So it's very important. It will take one missile, and they have hypersonics that can hit that thing, basically destroy it. And that's the end of America's intelligence gathering for the Southern Hemisphere. Now, when that happens, if that ever were to come about, Australia would be firing blind. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have the firepower aimed. So their Guam, their all of the stuff they've got in Japan, the stuff they've got in South Korea. I mean, literally, they have surrounded, and they're trying to get Mongolia, they're trying to get Vietnam, they've got the Philippines, they're trying to get China surrounded on the East Coast. And that's why one of the reasons they wanted Afghanistan. Many people don't know this. Afghanistan shares a border with Xinjiang. They wanted Kazakhstan. Remember, there was an attempted color revolution in Kazakhstan a couple of years ago. The Russians went in there, bang, stopped it, and then left. So that was all part of containment of China. China borders a lot of countries, and if China's sea routes are blocked, then everything goes by train across Xinjiang and Inner Mongolia. So they wanted troops and things, and they want to destabilize Mongolia. They want to destabilize Inner Mongolia. The China-Pakistan economic corridor is destabilized now by what's happened in Nepal. What's happening between China and India is being destabilized by what's happening in Bangladesh, what's happening in Assam, what's happening in the Punjab, what's happening in all these other places. India's got its own problems that we're not hearing about on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So geopolitically, China's right in the middle of all of these firestorms, and it's keeping its own calm. It's keeping very, very cool.
Yeah, you make a really good point. This is defensive. Like the fires that are being coincidentally started in all of these other countries. This is not defensive in nature. This is an offensive move in order to contain China. Well,
Myanmar is a border. Thailand is not. Thailand is not a border with China, but it's very close. And Cambodia is a border with China. So Myanmar, Cambodia, Sri Lanka is an important port. Pakistan is not bordering. It does border China, but way up in the northwest. But Pakistan is very important because it has Gwadar Port. Gwadar Port is in the province of Gwadar, which borders Iran, which of course Gwadar is now the most unstable. It's Balochistan, the most unstable region of Pakistan. And Pakistan has just signed a mutual defense treaty with Saudi Arabia, which is a really interesting thing. So there's a lot of stuff going on now, which it's all part of a huge jigsaw puzzle, and years ahead. They're thinking years ahead, much further than I can possibly think. I'm just a guy who rides a bike. There you go. Yeah,
you're more than that, Jerry. Come on, you're more than that.
Well, that's what I am to me.
This looks like the beginnings of a third world war. I mean, like the movements and the way this stuff is shaking out. These little conflicts that have clear political sides to them and political rationale to the reason that these fires are being set in all of these countries. No, you're right. China's remaining calm, but let's be clear. A lot of this stuff is aimed directly at China, and China's taking a defensive posture.
And any country that aligns itself with China now, any country that aligns itself geopolitically, defense-wise. So China isn't another interesting point. China has never signed a mutual defense pact with any country. It signed security pacts, it signed security treaties, but it's never signed a mutual defense. So it's not going to war with another country or for another country. It's not even getting involved in Israel and Gaza. A lot of people are critical of China for this. It's not involved in Russia, Ukraine. It's selling to both. It's selling to Gaza and it's selling to Israel as well. It hasn't pulled back its diplomats from any of these countries. It simply says it's business as normal, but we're going through the United Nations to try and get this calm, try and get this settled. It's very rare for China to actually come out and say anything that is any more than just, we want this to be sorted, we want this to be settled. China is the peacemaker, the mediator, the negotiator. It does all of these things, and if it takes one side, it can't help negotiate with the other side. So it does this deliberately. It's quite deliberate. It's a non-interference policy. It does not interfere in any sovereign nation anywhere. And I challenge anyone to prove me wrong on that, because there is no evidence. And there's a lot of allegations and a lot of assertions, but there's no evidence that China has ever interfered with the running of a sovereign nation.
No, I'm unaware of it. I mean, yes, you're right. There's a heaping amount of criticism on continuing trade with Israel, considering China is their number one trading partner if you look at the European Union as individual blocks.
Yeah.
And we've had arguments on this channel about it also that has had horrible outcomes in regards to the guests that have come on this channel. But that's
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. One of the other issues was the chip manufacturing.
Yeah.
That I am fascinated by that. So the United States was taking action in order to try to put pressure on China's chip industry, trying to basically cripple their technological capability. China said, okay, we'll build our own. And they turned around and they built their own chips. Now, the chips that are coming in from NVIDIA, China has looked at those with a heavy amount of skepticism, as they should, by the way, considering what may be, let's say, backdoors, or maybe it looks like China is looking for deep into the future of a potential military engagement and don't want any kind of, let's say, weaknesses in their systems in the way that, let's say, Iran might have had weaknesses in their systems because of the chips that they were getting from India.
It's a little more than that. You're right. You're 100% right, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And what happened 2 or 3 years ago, the US decided that it was going to stymie China's growth, and the best way to do that was to defy them and say, you're not getting any of the really high-end chips that you need. And once that decision was made, they then went to South Korea, they went to Taiwan, and they went to their American partners and said, you guys can't sell anymore. And then they went to Holland, where the machines are made to make these chips, and said, some of this is our proprietary property. You can't sell it to China. So China was then left. And you say that we can all argue and agree or disagree about how bad this was. But this was devastating for China. To suddenly be cut off from what they needed was devastating. So what then happened was China had to find backdoors to get these things. And they did. They found some suppliers that were buying from other places. But ultimately, they said, we need to make our own. And everybody said, this is not possible. It will take 10 years. Everybody outside of China said, this is going to take 10 years to overcome. China said, well, we'll do it in 3. And that's what they did. China's speed is a very commonly used phrase here in China, particularly here in Guangdong, where I live. And Shenzhen speed, Guangdong speed, China speed. Basically, what they did was they threw a load of resources at it. They threw some really good people at it and said, you've got to come up with something fast. So now China has a new chip. It has a whole range of new chips, all the way down to the bog standard, bottom of the range chips that power up your washing machines and stuff and your fridges. So what they've done now is they've said, we no longer need NVIDIA. NVIDIA went to Trump, appealed to Trump, and got permission to sell the higher level chips that were not the highest level. And Trump agreed with that, but they had to pay a 15% export tariff. I mean, they didn't call it that, but that's what it is. It was 15% got paid into the Trump war chest if NVIDIA were going to sell these H20s, which were the chips that they were going to sell. When that happened, quite rightly, I think China looked at it and said, well, hang on, why has Trump changed his mind? And I've said this many times, you accuse others of what you are guilty of.
Yes.
This is exactly what is happening here. There was a report today, just today, in Australia's media about how Australia could be in danger with Chinese cars because China can either switch them all off, which will cause traffic chaos. It can explode them. They are listening and monitoring devices. Now, all of these things, China has never, ever hinted or indicated that it could or will or even has the ability to do this. So it's accused the other of what you may be guilty of yourself. So it looks to me like China just went to NVIDIA and said, we want to know all the information about these chips. And NVIDIA said, no, we're not going to give you that information. So then they said, well, we're not going to allow them to be imported. So for 3 years, America has said, you can't buy them. We're not going to sell them to you. Now America said, we will sell them to you. And China said, we've got something else. We're frightened of what you might be putting into them, so we're not going to buy them. So just yesterday or the day before, as a result of what's happening in Madrid, the trade talks going on in Madrid, where the TikTok thing was finalized. It certainly hasn't been finalized, but it's coming to its final stages now. But that's happening in Madrid, where they had a neutral place to have these meetings. And what as a result of that meeting, China came out and said, we're not buying NVIDIA anymore. So we're not going to buy any American chips. We're going to only buy chips from our own suppliers, SMIC, Huawei, companies like that. There's a new company which has come up with a completely different chip. And I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about it, but it's a completely different process, and it's better, faster, and cheaper to produce by all accounts. So China has now become self-reliant, self-sufficient, and secure, and it doesn't have the risks of the American chips, nor does it have the risk of what America did before, weaponizing the chip. What it has done is exactly what America did to them 3 years ago. It's weaponized the product that America must have and can't live without, and that's the rare elements. So China has weaponized, for sure, there's no argument there. And people say, China are evil for doing this. Well, no, you did it first. It's simple as that. You did it first. There's no evil intent there. There's just a simple case of, you're going to put this into weapons that point at us. We don't want that. They've weaponized it. So good luck to China, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, all of these things are rational acts. And all of these things were effectively spurred on by U.S. behavior in trying to either weaponize chips, weaponize the AI thing, weaponize, weapons themselves that they were going to use rare earths and then turn around, make weapons to aim at China. Yeah, all of these things are rational acts. These things aren't
China has done nothing except ask for and look for global cooperation everywhere. Every single thing that China puts out asks for and looks for global cooperation. China doesn't want to change the rules of the World Trade Organization. It doesn't want to change the rules or the Charter of the United Nations. It simply says, why don't we all apply by these rules? We do. Right. Why can't you? And that's what China is asking America now. Why aren't you applying your own rules? As soon as we get to the position where we're stronger than you, you bring in new laws which don't conform with World Trade Organization. They don't conform with the United Nations Charter. I mean, the United Nations Charter has just been ripped up and shredded in the last few weeks, but the World Trade Organization rules have been shredded for the last 10 years or thereabouts.
Yeah, I've said there's no such thing as international law.
Not anymore, no.
I would tell you, I would give it in this kind of parable, I guess, why I call it a parable. The Democratic Party for the longest time had said, hey, lefties, I know you don't agree with us, but we're all in this together. You're closer to us politically, and we are now the leader in this. We had New Deal Democrats at one point, and now you've had third way. When Sanders ran, Sanders easily had the thrust of the energy was behind him. They did any and everything in their power to put a knife in Sanders. And meaning this idea of us being in the same boat is nonsense. It was only we were ahead and we wanted to con you into believing that we were somehow on the same team. We were not on the same team. The moment that you got a candidate that was a better, stronger candidate, we did everything in our power to put a knife in them. The U.S. was the same way. We could make that argument of freedom, justice, rules that we should follow. The UN is a great thing and everything else when we were in the lead. The moment that we couldn't compete on equal footing, it all changed almost overnight. Yeah,
I'll bet you there's not many American people have read the United Nations Human Rights Report on America. You as an American are not very good at human rights in your own country. It's quite shocking that America, this is why America got out of the Human Rights Commission. They stopped being a member of it. They withdrew out of it and they said, no, we're not going to be part of this. And because they and Israel were being criticized for human rights issues. And so America pulled out under Trump. They pulled out again in parts of things like this. They're pulling out of this. They're pulling out the Paris Accord. They're pulling out. Basically, they pull out. I mean, America will never get pregnant because they pull out too early of everything.
Sometimes that's a good thing, Jerry. Sometimes you got to pull out.
Yeah, who wants to be America's bastard child? Oh,
right.
Sorry.
right.
Wash my mouth out with soap. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It's like daddy decides to leave. You don't necessarily want that. Got to pull out. No, you're right. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, we're not all that trustworthy in the sense of stick-to-itiveness. I mean, the UN report that just came out about the genocide thing is disturbing. And again, we don't acknowledge it. We don't accept it. The rest of the world.
Has it even been published in American media at all?
I haven't.
Do American media know about? Australian media don't. So, I mean, Australian media have talked about how Israel is being criticized by the United Nations, but the word genocide has not been used in Australian media. The ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, are not talking about genocide. They're talking about criticism of Israel. The United Nations has criticized Israel. Yes, it has, for genocide. They didn't mention that. At least not the reports I read.
I haven't seen the reports. I mean, I haven't seen, obviously I cover news all day, so I've seen it, but and I've read through it, but I haven't seen it covered on any kind of media outlets. So no, you're absolutely right. These AI chips, I'm curious on something else. These also, now that this is a business that China has effectively generated and created with the industrial might, these are things that can be sold across the world, especially the global South countries that China is in alliance with.
And they'll be open sourced as well. So Americans can produce them. There won't be a problem with that. Once these things are up and running in the market, they'll be open sourced. So there'll be a factory in Uganda making them. There'll be a factory in Botswana that makes them. There'll be a factory in Guatemala, not Guatemala. Guatemala doesn't deal with China. It deals with Taipei. It's probably I think it's one of two countries in Latin America that does. That was a bad example, but yeah, somewhere in Colombia, Nicaragua, there will be a factory that makes these things for the global South at global South prices. Yeah, that's how China operates.
Wait, you said they're going to be open source. So how they're made?
They're not yet. They're not at the moment because they're still protected. But once these things are up to full speed, I'm fairly certain they will be open source. Pretty much everything China does, it open sources. If you take a look at DeepSeek, you can get in there. It's all open source stuff. All of these things that China does, it puts them on the market and says anyone else can share in this. They're not in it. Of course, they want to make money. The barriers to entry on this are extremely high. So you can't just set up a factory in Botswana and do it. You need to have billions of dollars to set up that factory. So China will go there to Botswana, set up the factory, help them, train them, work them into a working operation so that Botswana has its self-sufficiency. I'm just an example. It won't be Botswana, but so that the country they're made in has this as part of what they do, and they'll be available to people at prices that are open source prices. So it's not like, you know, if you make a new mouse for your computer and you open source that, anyone can make that. It's not very difficult. If you're making a special DUV lithographic 5 nanometer chip, no, not everyone can make it. But if it's open source, anyone can. America will be able to make this. And they will be able to use them, but they'll be very worried that if they're using this open source that's Chinese, what's it capable of?
I'm curious on something else. Give me your take on this. I know China will make the argument, we're doing this because we want to advance humanity, meaning our objective is human advancement. That's what we want to do. So when we're going and working with other countries, they obviously want to work with us because A, we're not trying to tell them what they should do with their politics if we're given a loan or something. B, we're not trying to tell them how they should, we're not saying you should be more woke. You need to change your government. We're not telling you any of that stuff.
No.
Ultimately, they build roads, hospitals, highways, etc. It's China. I mean, this goes beyond human advancement, though, right? I mean, there's a geopolitical rationale for doing something like this.
It's mutual benefit. China's not doing it for free. There's definitely mutual benefit there. China, I mean, it'd be very naive to think that China is so nice that they just give away all of their profits. They haven't even developed China yet. They're working around the world and they haven't yet developed China. China is on the East Coast extremely well developed. But as you say, I've traveled, it's closer to 40,000 kilometers. You ride a bike through central China and you see some absolutely poverty-ridden places. You know, they still riding around on old tricycles but what you don't see now are donkey carts. You don't see goats pulling carts, which is something I've seen in the past. You don't see people living in hovels with no electricity anymore. Nobody in China has got that now. I mean, it's moving out of abject poverty into gaining towards a moderately prosperous society, but there are still a lot of poor people, and China hasn't yet fully developed. But going back to the 1950s, the moment China controlled all of China's borders, which was about 1955, not 1949, as most people believe. There's still parts of China were a little bit behind, and some parts were controlled long before 1949. But when 1949, the October the 1st, was the first national day, China, the People's Republic of China was announced. They still didn't control all of China. They controlled most of it. So in 1955, they started to control all of China, and they were helping African countries, any African country that had a Marxist or socialist leaning and was trying to shake off the shackles of colonialism. China helped them, and helped them in a way that, some of it was financial, some of it was infrastructure, and they've been doing it since then. Since 1950s, China has been helping. So this is what they do. They lifted, and the story about 800 million people lifted out of poverty is not strictly true. 800 million people lived in abject poverty in China in 1949. Everyone was in poverty in 1949. It was 800 million people. Now there's 1.4 billion people. And of course, we've got more people. And the people who've been lifted out of poverty are basically all the people that existed in poverty in 1949, 1950. So this number is just a kind of a guide. Everyone in the country is now out of abject poverty, and the country's working hard not to allow them to slide back into it. So there's all kinds of things going on, but that's another story. There's a guy you need to talk to, a guy called Jason Smith, who works in China, and he does a podcast called The Bridge Podcast in China. Now, Jason, I can put you in touch with him, has just written a book about, the book is called A World Without Poverty. And I interviewed him on my channel a few days ago, but I think you should interview him, because on this particular topic, he is far more expert than me. He's just taken 4 years out of his life to dedicate his entire free time for 4 years just to this topic. And he's released a book, and it's available. It's called A World Without Poverty. Jason R.P. Smith is the writer, and he's a personal friend of mine. I've met him and his wife, and he's a really nice guy. But he spent a lot of time working on this to show that China is all around the world. He's listed every country where China has, and not every single infrastructure they've put in. He's just, in every single country in the world, he's listed some of the things that China has done, where they've done it. Yeah, it's a brilliant book. It's a book like Twitter. You can scroll through it. You don't have to sit and read the whole book, because there's a page on Angola, and there's a page on Algeria, and then you've got a page on Zimbabwe at the back. You could just go to your country if you want to have a look. And it's alphabetically organized, and he shows you what China is doing around the world. And sometimes it's interest-free loans, sometimes it's low-interest loans, sometimes it's standard loans, sometimes it's gifts, donations. But it's an incredibly moving moment when you realize that when people think China is looking for influence, they have literally spent their entire GDP looking for that influence. It's not really about that. It's about benefiting humanity. And Jason can tell you a lot more than I can about it on individual things. I asked him in the interview what was his favorite of all of the things. He said, my favorite's not even in the book.
What was his favorite?
Okay. What was it? They built, I can't remember what infrastructure it was. They built something. I think it might have been a hospital. And the payment for the hospital was in chocolate. The country was a massive, chocolate. And they paid for the hospital, or whatever the infrastructure was, by supplying China with chocolate. What a great idea.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's super interesting. And look, it makes friends. I mean, you go somewhere, you build a hospital as opposed to a military base. That
so
country
so when America goes into that country and pays journalists, and they do this, they pay journalists in that country $100, which is a lot of money in Botswana and places like that, $100 cash for writing a negative China report. Half the journalists are going, I'll take your money, but I'm not writing a negative journalist report here. I'm writing a report that is kind of honest. So Africans don't see China the way Americans see China. Africans see China as being the country that's just invested and given them 500 jobs here, given them a new hospital, 10 new schools, a new train line, a new road, whatever it is that they've given. It's bridges, roads, it's everything, airports. They've done it all. They've done it all. They even put in, Africa now has a CDC, a Center for Disease control. Africa has one. I'm not sure which country it is, but it was a gift from China for the whole of Africa, but it's based in one country.
Wow.
I think it might be Ethiopia. Might be.
One of the other things that you sent when we were emailing or corresponding back and forth was this rank hypocrisy that is taking place in the US, where the Trump administration has decided, well, we don't let, and this is the level of hypocrisy. I don't even know if you know how extreme this hypocrisy is on this. So when the Trump administration came in, they said the Biden administration was doing everything in their power to censor speech. We're not going to do that. We're going to have free speech. We're going to open up the dialogue, blah, 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 blah. J.D. Vance goes to Europe and browbeats them, saying your problems are your own. This is not from somewhere else. And you guys need to be more believing in liberal democracies in regards to free speech. And then Charlie Kirk dies, and Trump has decided to use this as a political weapon, as a cudgel, and has made this strident speech or tweet saying Antifa is a terrorist organization, and is using that as a cudgel to go after an organization that doesn't exist. B is a stalking horse for going after speech and content that Trump just doesn't like. So that can be on issues of Israel, or that could be on issues just going after Trump himself. In the Charlie Kirk case, Stephen Colbert was taken off. I don't know if Colbert wasn't taken off for Kirk. He was taken off for something else. But again,
he was taken off for insulting Trump. Yeah,
that's what it was. Jimmy Kimmel
is off now.
He's off TV now indefinitely. And in place of Jimmy Kimmel, what they're going to do is they're going to play. I want to show you something. This is, I think they call it Sinclair ABC network or stations. They own about 40% of the media in the United States.
Right.
And to show you how repetitive this is, meaning this is just propaganda being displayed to the American public, with the American public not realizing it just because of they don't get the clarity of seeing multiple broadcasts taking place at once. They are going to play a Charlie Kirk special at Jimmy Kimmel's time. The only thing Jimmy Kimmel said was they're trying to make this guy come across on the left, and this guy is most likely MAGA. For that, the network didn't see anything wrong with it, according to Rolling Stones. But because of the threat that Trump issued, they removed Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely.
The choice was, if they didn't remove Jimmy Kimmel, the government would remove their license to broadcast.
Exactly. And they said, we got to get rid of Kimmel, even though they didn't see anything wrong with what Kimmel said. And Kimmel didn't say anything wrong. They could disagree with him. He didn't say anything wrong. This is
Hi, I'm Fox and
watch this. This is what gets deployed to 40% of the channels in the United States.
Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
I'm not going to subject you to all of that. I'm making the point that every day on TV networks all across the United States, the same text, the same verbiage even, is being injected into the minds of Americans. And they think
same in Australia too.
Oh, it acts the same way?
Yeah, pretty much. You've basically got much, I think in terms of paper media, about 80% is owned by one man, and he's an American. He's an Australian-born, naturalized American, Rupert Murdoch. And he has control over quite a lot of people inside of other stations, other media. He owns Sky News. He has a fairly large ownership of all media, but in paper, newspapers, it's about 80%. It's extremely large. Yeah,
that is just propaganda.
Well, so let me put this into perspective, because there's a reason why I kind of thought if we have time, we'll talk about this. I get challenged all the time by people saying you don't have freedom of speech in China, and I say yes, you do. You have the freedom to say whatever you want to say, as long as it's not violent, aggressive, insulting. It's not hateful. Now, this is the thing that they're saying in America. You can have hate speech. You can be a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and that is hateful. It's hateful behavior, hateful actions, and even hateful speech. You can't be a member of the Communist Party, not legally anyway, in America or in certain states. I think there's 1 or 2 states where you can, but most of America, the Communist Party is actually illegal still in America. But then now they're starting to say you can't insult people. You can't denigrate the memory of a great American, Charlie Kirk. You can't insult the president. And I get told all the time by people saying to me, I believe that you have free speech when you post something on Chinese social media that says Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh. Okay, I get that. First of all, you're a bloody idiot. Okay, I get the comparison, but this is the leader of 1.4 billion people and the 3rd largest nuclear-powered army and military, the largest military in the world. Why would I want to insult this guy who's managing an economy that is being hammered by the world's largest economy and the world's largest military every single day, and he's managed to get. And I'm living in China. I live a safe life. I live a convenient life. I have all of the things that I need. And I'm a retiree now. I have a pension coming from England, and I live the life of Riley in China on a British pension. This place is a really, really well-run place. Why do I want to insult the man who made this, the man who manages this? I'm not going to insult him. So all I would say is this: if I did, nothing would happen to me personally. What would happen is my post would be taken down. That's it. If I continue to do it, I might get a knock on the door from the police because they know who we are. We have real life. If we go onto our WeChat or our QQ or any of our social medias in China, they know who we are because you have to log in with your telephone number, and your telephone number is connected to your passport. Okay, that's a restriction, and I have no problem with it because I trust the government. I don't have a big deal about that. It's, well, what's the problem? So apart from that, if I posted this and I was persistent about it, I would probably get a knock on the door from the police saying, why are you doing this? Why are you, a foreigner, insulting our leader? And I'd say, well, I don't like him. Well, they'd say, if you don't like him, you can go home.
Yeah,
and that's a fair statement. And I kind of agree with America's statement on this. You have freedom of speech as an American, but if a Chinese person comes and says, I want to join the Communist Party, they say, no, you can't. You have to go. They kick you out. So you're subject to American laws and American restrictions, but also you need to respect those, and you don't bring your own standards in. So I don't bring my Western standards into China. I comply with China's laws most of the time. And so what would happen to me ultimately is they would say, if you're going to keep doing this, we're going to close your WeChat account. I don't want my WeChat account closed. It would be really inconvenient. So that's the worst punishment that I would get, is my WeChat account closed. Now I can't do it anymore. When I then apply for my next visa, they'd probably say, well, you've already told us you don't like China, so we're not going to renew your visa. I'm not getting kicked out. I'm just being told we're not going to renew your visa because you told us you don't like China. You don't like our leadership. That's what would happen to me. But I'm a foreigner here. My wife would have no such thing. If she did this, they would knock on her door and say, why are you doing this? You got to stop. And ultimately, they'd say, we're going to close your account down. So she can't do it anymore. And this is the disappeared. This person disappeared. Well, they didn't disappear at all. My wife's still there cooking the dinner and cleaning the house. And all she can't do is post things because her account has been closed because she broke the law. One of the laws says you can't insult anyone. Now, what that means is if someone in China compares me to a cartoon character, and somebody in your comments did a little while ago, that's okay. No, it wasn't a cartoon. I look and sound like the scientist on Jurassic Park, I think. I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I also look a bit like Prince Andrew in a certain light. So I'm not so happy about that anymore. But if someone insults me, I can go to the police and say, look what this person's done. They've insulted me. The police would take it down. They would go and say, well, you can't insult these people. You get a warning. Then you get called in to drink tea. This is an expression they use when the police call you in. And usually when you sit down, they give you a cup of tea. And they sit down and say, well, you can't do this. You got to stop doing that. And you go, oh, okay, I'll stop doing it. And if you don't, you can then be arrested on the word of a judge. They have to go to court, get an arrest warrant, and they can arrest you. And then you can be charged. Now, alternative to that, they can do something called administrative detention without involving the judge. They can just put me into a prison, a localized prison, not a real big prison with, just a local jail, for 5, 10, or 15 days on the basis of the chief of police. Now, I have no recourse. I can't go to the court. I can't get out. I've broken the law, and I've refused to stop breaking the law. And they will then lock me up for 5 days or 10 days or 15 days and then let me out. Now, in my case as a foreigner, they'd probably let me out and say, sorry, mate, you're not getting a new visa. You're going home at the end of your visa term. Okay, fine. That's me done. So I wouldn't do it. And that is what would happen. Now, what happens in America is cancel culture of a much, much deeper and more insidious method. In China, you get warnings. In China, you get deleted posts before you get deleted accounts. Now, in America now, they're not just deleting accounts, they're deleting whole platforms. And I've had stuff on my TikTok, which they say this breaches our TikTok guidelines. Why? And they've given me the result of the appeal. The appeal says, we still think you violated our guidelines. I've looked at every single one of my videos. None of them violate the guidelines. I just talk about China. So TikTok in America are already doing this now. So everything that they say about China is actually happening inside of America already. And the ban on VPNs, the ban on TikTok ban, which is pretty much anything that the president says, we don't like this. The law's in place right now. And if you go onto it, you as an American, even in Indonesia, where you are now, if you go onto TikTok after it's been banned, it's not going to get banned. But if you were to go onto TikTok after it got banned, you would be in breach of the law. If you used a VPN to do it, you and the VPN would be in breach of the law. So the VPN is going to control what you can go on. That's not a VPN. It's a control VPN. Now, if they're controlling what you can go on, then they're controlling your access to the internet. This is the worry that Australia currently has. They've just put into law a system that says you must be 18 to go on certain sites. Well, how do I prove I'm 18? Right. I have to register. And if I'm registered, they already know who I am. If I go into a VPN, they say you can't go on. So they already know. They're already doing it. Yep.
Jerry, we're gonna have to close.
Sure, sorry.
No, don't apologize. That's necessary for people to know, because you're right. People would be on this high horse and it's like, oh, you can't do X or Y, missing the fact that they're deporting people in the U.S. for stuff like that. I mean, they're sending people to other countries, for God's sake.
They even sending Americans out.
Yeah. You should have seen the ICE raid that took place the other day on Americans.
In Van Nuys, I think it was Van Nuys. They threw a guy down on his arm, I think. Broke his arm or dislocated his elbow and then broke a couple of ribs. This guy's an American trying to protect his business from ICE. Yeah. He'll win a court case.
Jerry Gray, man, thank you for this. Jerry Gray, he's host of Jerry's Take on China. He's lived in China for more than 20 years, traveled more than 40,000 kilometers at this point across the country by bike. Jerry, and please put me in contact with Jason.
Jason, will do.
Yeah.
I'll send you an email.
Have a good one, man. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much. And thanks to your audience. Good night.
Have a good one. All right. We have another guest in the background. We are joined with the woman herself, retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski.
Very good.
Yes. Nailed it. Karen Kwiatkowski, she's a retired Air Force officer whose assignments included duties as Pentagon desk officer, various roles in the National Security Agency. She's author of several books, including African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and also Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solution. Karen, thank you for joining me on this one. You were one of the people who I thought of when the story came out, because I'm very curious on your take on this. So the United States attacks Israel attacks Doha, let's be honest, with the help of the United States, because of air defense, nothing like that came on, right? Trump is acting like, I didn't know anything about it. I'm so angry at Israel, and blah, 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 blah. All of this nonsense. This was a lay-in-wait attack, just like Soleimani, and just like what took place with Iran, where they were lulled into this false sense of security and then attacked. All right. They have Arab Islamic Summit, where you have like 50 nations coming together to have this conversation about what are we going to do about Israel's expansionary agenda. And it is expansionary. At this point, they're not hiding the ball. They're talking openly about greater Israel and the countries that they're going to have to go into. Netanyahu is making speeches saying, I will bomb anywhere that I need to. Egypt, Turkey, Doha, wherever it is, we will hit whoever we need to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question was always going to be, what are the nations going to do? Even if these guys are vassals, they see themselves as something different, which you could see in Qatar, where they seem to be shocked by the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Saudi Arabia comes out of the blue. Now, they say these negotiations have been taking place for years. Right here, Saudi Arabia, nuclear armed Pakistan, some mutual defense pact. And one of the most interesting things in this pact, it says, asked whether Pakistan would be obliged to provide Saudi Arabia with nuclear umbrella. A senior Saudi official told Reuters, quote, this is a comprehensive defense agreement that encompasses all military needs. Basically, if Pakistan is attacked, or if Saudi Arabia is attacked, both would have to respond in the defense of the other. Let's step into that. Give me your take on this. I'm very curious on your take on this, being somebody who was in the Pentagon.
Well, I mean, you can see that the unipolar power, the big one, the U.S., that many of these, unfortunately, many of these Gulf states are vassals to, or in some way dependent on the United States in the past. They realize what the whole world realizes, and that is that the U.S. capability is shrinking to do anything honorable. Okay, I think they actually used to trust the U.S. in some extent, but after Qatar and after some of the things that have been done that you mentioned, these assassinations out of the blue, the lying in wait, this has broken the trust. Now, trust was probably broken in many ways long before this, but these are kinds of things that really cause you to change your assumptions. And I think what Saudi Arabia is doing, and Qatar and these other, many of the Gulf Council, Gulf Cooperation Council countries are doing, is looking around and saying, who's really going to stand for our interests? And the other thing is that drives into this. And of course, the nuclear thing is cool. Now, you remember when Iran was attacked in that so-called, when Israel attacked Iran and then we bombed Iran, you mentioned that the so-called 12-day war earlier this year. Pakistan said to the world publicly, I don't remember what the format was, that they have nukes and they would protect Iran. Now they don't have an agreement with Iran. They do trade heavily with Iran, and they are not unfriendly with Iran, but that was kind of I think a precursor to what everyone over there is thinking. And that is, how can we do two things? One, how do we protect ourselves from Israel? And that means Israel and the U.S. Even though many are allied with the U.S., apparently that alliance means nothing in terms of their own security. They are all targets of assassination, potentially, if they step in the wrong, in the wrong direction. So how do we protect ourselves strategically? So they're all thinking about that. But also, too, Gaza has activated the populations in these countries. Some of these, they have elections, but we consider Pakistan kind of, a military-run society. We look at the various kingdoms, and we see those as elite-governed monarchies or whatever. We don't really see democracy like America likes to talk about. But these leaders are quite aware of their people's opinions and feelings. So, and they're very angry that their own governments have done nothing about Gaza. And they go, why, we of all people should be defending Gazans, should be defending Palestine, and we're not. So they're responding, I think, in some respects to the reality of the world that they see becoming, the U.S. is playing a smaller role, Israel is out of control. And then they're also trying to reflect and get in front of their own population's view of what needs to be done.
Yeah, I also have to think that at this point they realize that when it comes to Israel, the U.S. is not going to protect them on this.
Oh yeah, I think they know that now. Yeah, if they didn't know it before, I think it's extremely clear now. And also, it's not just that the U.S. isn't protecting them. We facilitated the attacks. We killed the Iraqi, Iranian general that was Soleimani. We killed him. We had planned an assassination and killed him. We bombed with the most incredible long-range bombs, according to Trump, right? Wasn't that a beautiful, big, beautiful bombing? He loved that. We did that, working with Israel, working directly with Israel, and forcing the submission of some of our Arab and Gulf state allies to make that happen in Iran just several months ago. And then, of course, what we did now, Trump knew everything about that. And he approved it. The best case you could say is, well, I approved it because I had to, because it was already launched and there was nothing I could do. So I could either look weak and say I didn't approve it and they did it over my protests, or I approved it to make myself look like I'm stronger. And that would be typical Trump. You know, he cares about, he wants to look powerful. So the worst thing he could do is say, well, I told him not to do it and I warned him against it. And then when they told me I told him to turn back and they all ignored me. Well, he doesn't want that publicized. So in any case, he approved it. He approved it because he had to, and probably because he wanted to. I think Trump's view is very similar to Netanyahu's. Why that is, we can analyze, but he views, just like Netanyahu, that you can kill, if you kill and destroy the one that you hate, your enemy, whatever that is, like the other leader that's messing with you. If you can destroy him and threaten his family or intimidate him or her, then you can get your way. You know, it's a game of intimidate. It's a game of it's poker. You know, it's like poker with arms. So that you know, it's like mafioso way. You know, which is not the real mafia, of course, but the way we see it on television. You know, like watching Goodfellas or something like that.
Yeah, Goodfellas. Yeah.
You know, not real. I don't know how the real mafia is, but of course the TV mafia is, if you have a problem, you cap it, you decapitate it, right? So I think that's how Trump views things. And that makes him, of course, very dangerous for everyone. And we're seeing that domestically, too. You know, Trump's like, well, it looks like some Antifa people killed Charlie. I think I have my own views. I think a lot of people do about who killed Charlie and why. But if it's Antifa, Trump's like, oh, we're going to get Antifa. We're going to go after them. You know, we're going to stop them from operating. So this is his view. It's a very simplistic view about dealing with things, which means that the Gulf states, as they see how Trump operates, is very similar to the way Netanyahu operates. Whether that's because Netanyahu talked him into it or whatever, we don't know. But it's very similar. And that means there's no trust. And they must defend themselves, and they must get their act together, or continued assassinations with the U.S. assisting with, stand downs of radar, like in Qatar, like they did. You know, I mean, those missiles were not even nothing. No alarms even went off. You know, well, that's American. That's what we did. I don't think, you know, I mean, you could say, well, maybe Israel, you know, had a bug in the system and could do that. Maybe they could, but I think we were definitely a part of facilitating the assassination of that Hamas team. And why would we do that? Because Netanyahu and the U.S., they don't want a settlement. They want Palestinians dead. They want them dead. And within months, we will see, well, you know, we're going to see them dead, because not just the 500,000, and I think the number is 500,000 or 600,000 killed now through war and rubble, but also the what's coming as the weather gets a little cooler and the starvation spreads throughout even more people. It won't take much. It won't take much. And, you know, I wouldn't put it past the Israelis or the Americans to do kind of what we tried to do with Cuba years ago. Remember, the CIA had some sort of swine flu or something that they tried to put infected pigs on the island to see if they could start a thing, you know.
Kill people,
biological warfare would probably be the next step. But being that the people of Gaza are so weakened and unsheltered and starved right now, it wouldn't take biological warfare. You know, I mean, a flu or a dysentery or any kind of thing spreading in these concentrated areas will kill the rest of them. And that is the objective. That is Israel's objective. And it is also the U.S. objective, because Trump wants to get it over with. Yes. He's unable to negotiate it. He's unable to stop the weapons. He can't control Netanyahu. He likes Netanyahu. They're tempting him with this vision of real estate development in Gaza, which he still Trump still hangs on to. And there's a lot of people that, well, the Brits, the Europeans, there's a lot of people interested in that real estate. And who's not interested in the gas fields that belong to the Gazans? Well, if there's no Gazans, then who's going to stop Israel from exploiting the gas fields? They already are exploiting some of them. They're kind of a shared off of Israel's coast, off of Gaza's coast. But yeah, this is going in the direction that Netanyahu wants it to go, and the direction Trump wants it to go. And the Gulf Council, the Gulf countries, the Arab countries, and others recognize it. And they say, well, what can we do at this point? Well, they should have done something a long time ago, but they weren't organized. And this is just the evolution of power. They are now saying, okay, what can we do? Well, we can have a nuclear umbrella, and that might protect us from a direct decapitation attack.
By Israel, who also have nukes undeclared.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I think it's also, I agree with you about this kind of mafioso way of dealing with it. But I think it's hubris also. Donald Trump looks at the U.S. as a superpower. He believes that for all intents and purposes, regardless of what happens, Qatar will still have to deal with him. So he sends Rubio to Israel, and then he sends Rubio to Qatar to try to say, hey, it's okay. We'll protect you for real next time. We just need you to continue to have the negotiations, which you would think, if Qatar has any sense, will be a flat. No, it's outrageous. Yeah. Saudi Arabia, it's fascinating to me on this because it seems like they understood very clearly what is happening. This deal that we've made with the US, it's off the table. We will get hit and they won't do anything about it.
Yeah.
We need somebody who also has a nuclear umbrella because Israel has nukes and could use those nukes.
Yeah.
And the problem that Iran has in many respects is you can go back and forth, but at the end of the day is if Israel decides, well, now we're using our nukes. Okay, well, you've decided as a country that you don't want nuclear weapons. Fair enough. But now you're stuck with the consequences of not having nuclear weapons against two nuclear powers. Whereas Saudi Arabia is like, that is no longer an issue for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, Pakistan, the leaders in Pakistan and the conversation amongst some of these other countries in the region is, you know, they say, well, we don't want you to develop nuclear power. Nobody can develop nuclear power. See what happened to Iran. You can't develop it. You can't do it. Can't even go there. And it was reported that at some time ago, the Saudi king said, well, why would I need to develop a bomb? I'll just get one from Pakistan. And this is before the last, the attack on Iran's Fordow and the other two sites. So yeah, I think they're recognizing that the world has changed. And also to, like, we don't, Americans, we don't pay any attention to us. And Trump is the same way. Trump is, how old is he now? He's in his high 70s or 80 or something like that. He's
pushing 80.
Yeah. So he's of a generation that grew up thinking of all of the Middle East as really a backward place, stupid people, you know, with old timey ways of running their countries like monarchies, you know. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of people, a lot of desert, oil, but we can handle that. We can exploit that, much like European countries did. And we did that. We did that all of his lifetime, really. And what has happened is the world has changed quite a bit. Have you know, I know this last Substack I did, the last article I wrote, I used a picture of the city of Doha, the city line of Doha.
Yes.
My God. We don't have anything like that in the United States. Nothing like that in the United States. These are new, shining, glorious cities. And they have built all that, of course, because they have oil wealth and they've put their money in it.
Yeah.
But that is not the Arab region. That's not the Iran. That's not even the Pakistan that Trump knows. He thinks that this place is much like what we saw in Gaza before they razed it to the ground. And that's kind of, you know, quaint in some ways, you know, urban development. It's obviously Gaza was all city, mostly. I mean, mostly cities, but the cities had a lot of older construction and new construction mixed in. You look at these Arab cities and some of the cities all throughout Central Asia. They're not like that. They are all new, glorious, wonderful things. Now, if you're living in those countries and you see those beautiful cities And yeah, you may not like your leadership and you don't like the wars. And many in the region do not like that their governments are beholden to the United States. They don't like that. But, they're proud of what they have. They're proud of it. And they're like, we are somebody. There's kind of like an emergence of identity of a player. And then the other thing that goes with that, of course, is the vast amount, billions and billions and billions of dollars that, and they are dollars because still denominated in dollars, of course, gold and I'm sure Bitcoin too, but you have all this money that they have. And these leaders, not at the beginning, but in the past decade, the past 20 years, the leaders of the region had been thinking, what are we going to do at the end of the oil era?
Right.
And it's probably not going to end for some time, but they're thinking already about what they're going to do. So that also is part of a national identity. Anyway, it's worth defending is what I'm saying. So now that they think, hey, it's worth defending, and our enemies are actually in the West. Our enemies are what's left of European capitals, which is very limited in power. Our enemies are Israel, of course, backed up by the United States. So there is a shift going on, and it makes sense, and it's smart, because if they don't shift, more Doha style assassinations will happen, and nobody wants that. So, and plus, to add on to this, just this week, I think Netanyahu gave a speech, and he said he said, we in Israel, we are the new Sparta. You guys in Israel, all of us are Israelis, you need to think about Sparta. And it's like, do you realize who you're talking to in Israel? I know the Israelis hate many. I 85% agree with Netanyahu, but I would dare say that 85% of Israelis do not agree with living like Spartans. Like old Spartans.
Constant
Everybody's
war.
in the military, constantly at war, a military industrial complex that drives the entire economy. And Netanyahu talked about this. He said, we're going to develop our own weapons and export them anywhere we want, and they're going to be the best weapons ever. Well, that's fine for Netanyahu at the end of his life to talk about that. But what about 20 and 30-year-old Israelis at the beginning of their life? Is this what they want? I don't think most people do, even if they hate Palestinians. It doesn't matter. That's part of their culture. They've been propagandized into that for decades. But Sparta, that's a big sell. That's a big sell to the people of Israel.
Especially when Israel was supposed to be a safe haven. There's something else I'm curious about. Pakistan has a close relationship with the United States, especially the Pakistani military. And as you pointed out, Pakistan is not a democracy. It's effectively a military dictatorship. I mean, they threw Imran Khan in a cage when he, ran afoul of the U.S. The back channel communication saying he was aggressively neutral. And that was, a bridge too far. Is that protection, if that's true? Meaning these seem to cross wires. That Saudi Arabia seems to want to diversify its military capability and get some kind of protection from Israel and the U.S. But the partner that is working with also has a close relationship with the U.S.
Yeah. I was thinking about that because, we do have, we've always, especially during the Bush wars and prior to that, Pakistan was our ally. Of course, we sold a lot of stuff prior to, I don't know, up through the mid 80s, I think, or 90s, we sold quite a bit of military equipment to them. Yeah. But we used Pakistan's intelligence support when we spent those 20 years, which Americans have wiped from their memory, 20 years in Afghanistan. So the Pact intel and Pact military were basically our allies in the fight against Taliban for shared reasons, I guess, in some respects. So we had that. But to me, that was really, when I think about it now, I think, well, maybe that's pretty transactional. Maybe that served the military leadership in Pakistan pretty well. And now it doesn't serve because Americans are there. We're not coming back. Taliban has shut the opium back down. So, we'll have our CIA selling new drugs instead of opium because they're not producing it anymore. But anyway, that takes America out of that region, and it takes the possibility of graft, American graft, possibility of deals with Americans, and intel sharing is reduced necessarily. It's going to be reduced because we just don't have a presence there. And there was never real trust. To think that there was ever real trust between U.S. and Pakistan. Well, there's no real trust between U.S. and Qatar. There's no real trust between U.S. and Saudi Arabia. The trust, but I don't see the U.S.-Pakistan relationship as a fundamental trust relationship. It was, I think, just, it was an alliance. It's a temporary alliance that made sense at the time. So I don't see that, and of course, the other thing, Gaza impacts everything. The people in Pakistan are enraged at what Israel's, the slaughter, the day-to-day slaughter, and the lack of activity, the lack of response from the West, and particularly the lack of response in the region amongst fellow Arabs and Sunnis. I mean, the Sunni Palestinian, Sunni Pacts. So, and they're doing nothing. So this rejection of the United States is very much, I would think, not calculated to reflect the popular opinion, but it does reflect the popular opinion, and that's got to be a good thing for whoever's running, the countries there. So
I heard somebody describe it as a Suez Canal moment, like that they jumped the shark with this attack on Doha, and that this is the consequences of it.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. Also, with Israel too, and like I'm far away from, I'm American. I look at this from far, far away. I don't know anything. What do I know? But in the region, in the region, who have lived with Israel for decades and decades, and have a very the region, the Arabs there, the neighbors, the Palestinians, the memory that they have. And the knowledge that they have about how Israel operates. It didn't start on October 7th. For Americans, it was like, oh, October 7th. Wow, what happened? Let's go see. No. This has been going on forever. This is the second Nakba, really, but it's not really the second. I mean, if you count them, this is a continuous Nakba. This is part of what the Zionist founders, wanted and planned, and they have been doing. So the region knows this very well, and they watch Israel, of course, as you would, right? If you had a rattlesnake in your shed in the back, or in your garage, every time you went in your garage, you would know, and you would warn people, there's a snake in there. We need to be careful. Well, that's Israel in the region. So everybody watches, everybody studies. And of course, some of them are compromised. They work with Mossad to get rid of their own enemies. There's all kinds of trading that goes on, but they know Israel. They understand how Israel operates. And what I think they are seeing is what we're kind of seeing too here in America. If you're watching them, you have a guy named Netanyahu. He's on his last legs politically, has been for some time. He's fighting wars on how many fronts is it now? 7, 8, 9.
Yes, like 7 fronts.
He's swearing that he's going to turn Israel into a Sparta. Meanwhile, he's got a small rebellion amongst the IDF. They're done. They're not fighting anymore. You've got a huge, there's a net, I think, for every Israeli coming into Israel to live there, obviously Americans to come take their little part of the West Bank, to settle. You've got 2 that left, 2 that were there that moved out, and they're not, and many of them won't come back, especially if it remains a Sparta. So that's weakness. That's huge weakness. I think we saw it particularly with the Charlie Kirk thing, because the first guy, Netanyahu, first off, has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. Okay. If anything, he should have been able to rely on TPUSA, Charlie Kirk's college organization, to be a good little producer of evangelical Zionist Christians, right? That's a core group. It's not all of TPUSA, but it's a chunk of them. And they should have relaxed. They couldn't relax, of course, we know, because Charlie had started to think for himself, and he in debating young people who could care less about Zionist Israel, and certainly think that what's happening in Gaza is a crime and it's terrible and it has to stop. So Charlie's turning away, but most people didn't know that. Most people didn't know that till after he was killed. Only people that are looking closely, watching Charlie Kirk, paying close attention, those are the people that knew.
Right.
And that was the environment on September 10th. And what did Netanyahu do? He bought airtime in American media to claim that Charlie was the best friend Israel ever had, and a bunch of other things. That,
by the way, that was very bizarre.
It was bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
Absolutely. And when people start doing bizarre things, and they've been at war for a while, and they're corrupt, what do we think? they're at the end of their rope, and they're going to be unpredictable. They're going to be very dangerous, but they're also going to be done with soon. I think Netanyahu has lost it. Now, for Americans to say that, that's one thing. For the region to say that, but I think Israelis see it too, and they're not stupid people. They're incredibly smart. They're incredibly well informed. No, they're propagandized inside of Israel, but the American Jewish population is rapidly becoming anti-Zionist for a number of reasons. You know, their pocketbook. They don't want to send their kids to a place that's at war, right? I mean, if you're an American Jew, you have a free ride. You can serve in the IDF. You can do all these things. It's wonderful. You have a second country, a second passport. But what loving parent is going to send their kid
to a war zone,
Israel like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what one's going to say? Oh, well, you can go there, and oh, by the way, maybe they'll put you in the IDF, and you can go slaughter some Palestinians and maybe get killed, because many IDF folks have been. They have faced a military cost, even though technically they're fighting an unarmed population. And not fighting it, they're slaughtering an unarmed population. But there's risk there, high risk for these Jewish kids that come from America. They should not be, and their parents don't want them to do that. So this whole thing is changing. Many things are changing in the kind of awareness and the heart of both America, in Jewry around the world, in Israel to some extent, and then of course in the greater South Asia, the Middle East. The attitudes are changing. They're learning. They're responding. And I think a lot of Americans are just going to be on the tail end of it. They're going to wake up and go, "Oh, what happened?" Because we don't pay.
We're not paying attention. Karen, you always have my appreciation. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. She is retired U.S. Air Force officer whose assignments include duties as a Pentagon desk officer with various roles in the National Security Agency. She's author of several books, including African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solutions. Karen, you have a fantastic day. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. That was a great breakdown by Karen. I hear my next guest in the background. I see her moving around. Let me bring her on. We are joined with a guest that people have been asking for. It's like, when is Margaret coming back? When is Margaret coming back? Margaret Kimberley. Margaret Kimberley, she's senior columnist and editor for Black Agenda Report and author of Presidential, Black America, and the Presidents. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
I'm doing great. It's nice to be back. It has been a few weeks, like a month or so. So
it's been a little bit, and people are like, "Where's Margaret?" Somebody said it yesterday. Where is Margaret? I said she'd be on tomorrow. They're like, "Yes, good, thank you." I would like to hit two articles that came out in Black Agenda Report. Okay. One, because a person who watches the channel sent me the article. In fact, sent it like 4 times. I'm being serious. She sent it like 4 times. She's like, "You must read this article." And it's this one. Now, you didn't write this one, but it's on Black Agenda Report. The second one you did write. Mm-hmm. Both are super interesting to me. So this one is called Capitalism Hijacked the World to Keep Contributing to Genocide. BRICS Proves It. And there are some profound statements in this that I radically agree with. One of them makes this point. It says, this is not hypocrisy, because the author is making this argument that regardless of all of this talk about a second economic system and something that's pushing back against the West, BRICS is still based on capitalistic incentive. That's right. It's still working with Israel to every degree that all of those other European countries are, for that matter, that the US is. And the author makes the point. This is not hypocrisy. This is something more systemic and more terrifying. These are not evil people making conscious choices to enable genocide. They are trapped actors in an economic system that evolved beyond human intention, a system that now operates according to its own logic of profit and growth, indifferent to moral horror it produces. And one last one before I bring you in. The other one she said, or the person said, this reveals capitalism's ultimate achievement. It has created a machine so complex, so interconnected, that it can compel an entire species to participate in its own moral destruction while everyone involved insists upon their innocence. That is profound, and that is correct. Give me your take on that. Effectively, this notion of BRICS, all of which protest loudly what is taking place in Israel, and yet all of which, to varying degrees, have investment, are contributing to the economy of death.
Yep.
They make the point about China selling drones, those drones being converted into things that murder children on a daily basis. Even South Africa, who sent Israel to the genocide court and yet still has some kind of financial or economic relationship with Israel. Give me your take on that. Well,
this is a reprint from Bet Beat Media, which I had not heard of before, I'm going to admit, but now I was very impressed with it. So we decided to print it because it answers a lot of questions, things that were seemingly mysterious. And I personally felt this aha moment about the BRICS and what they do and don't do. They clearly want to flee dollar domination. Yes. And the U.S., especially now with the Trump administration, they're all trying to protect themselves from this unpredictable administration, which, like Trump himself, is rash and just decides, okay, your tariffs are going to be X percent. Or, Brazil, one of the BRICS founding members. We don't like how you're treating Bolsonaro, your ex-president. So you're going to pay tariffs because of that. So, and China, China has all the cards financially. So they say, okay, we don't have to buy soybeans from you. We'll buy them from Brazil, right. Which, and I'm glad they have that ability to free themselves. But ultimately, these are capitalist countries. We're not talking about China is politically socialist, but allows a private sector to thrive. We are talking about a state regulated kind of capitalism. I'm blanking on the terms that people have used to describe it. But as long
with capitalistic characteristics or something.
Yeah,
what is
Chinese,
with Chinese. Yeah, that's it. Characteristics.
Yeah. But but China can be taken to task, and and the rest of us can just ask, why does no one stand up to Israel? Why is Israel with impunity murdering thousands of people, starving them to death? Who is going to stop them, and why hasn't anybody done that? And the answer is, it's all about the money. It's all about the money, and we have a system that supports them, that supports a lot of things that are wrong in the world. So we thought it was very important to have this amongst our reprints this week.
I came to a realization, and I realized that my take on history was wrong. And it's a sad realization, but I think it's true. If Hitler didn't invade European states and just murdered Jews, nobody would have gotten involved. Like, we were given this myth that never again, this idea that as human beings, we just won't accept a genocide taking place. As human beings, it is like morally repugnant for something like that to take place and for states to stand by and let it happen, let alone in the way that the U.S. effectively helps pay for it. 70%, if I'm not mistaken. But that's the wrong lesson. I mean, we made that a big issue because we were fighting Germany and we wanted to nail them down on this issue. You've invaded these other states. You've caused the war. There are 30 million Russians that are dead as a result. There are X number of Americans, Brits, French, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to make this hurt, and we're going to make this a stamp that we're going to put on you that you were a genocidal state. That was the wrong lesson. And I think this is a really good example of that being the wrong lesson. All of these states are realists. And from their point of view, they have the economic interests that they want to see maintained. And so whereas if we look back on history and we say, okay, what were the companies that were working with the Nazis? Well, there's a negative intent that we put on that. Like, those companies are repugnant. That's a depraved act. That's not the way it's working, though, in practice. The world is still working with Israel. There may be one or two states, Iran, Yemen, who've been just flat out heroes in this. But everyone else has still go to the trough and still work with them as if they were any kind of normal state.
Well, yes. And I think we need to say this is not the first genocide either since World War II. Many people have observed that what Hitler did in Europe was what Europeans were doing all over the world.
Yes.
Hitler is considered this, number one evil of all time in history because of what he did to Europeans. But what did the conquistadors do? What did the pilgrims and settlers do? What did, the alleged good guys in the war? What did France do in Vietnam? What did France do in Algeria? I mean, it's horrible, the war crimes that they committed. What the British did in Kenya in the 1950s. Yeah. Atrocities were so terrible, they destroyed the records. And so now you can't find out the details of the genocides they committed. So let's, first of all, be clear, this is not the first one. I'm glad the UN finally got around to saying what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide. But at the same time, it makes me angry because millions of people were saying that. We've been saying it for 2 years. Yeah. And as your previous guest was pointing out, that it was also not new. Israel's foundation. So, this idea, I think that what you're touching on, that somehow evil was defeated in this particular moment in 1945, and there was going to be a new world. Well, yes and no, because it was a war of colonial rivals. Also, Britain and France went right back to their evil doing. The U.S. emerged as the hegemon and got to do what it wanted to do. And there were countries which thwarted them. The Chinese Revolution, for example, it stands out. But it was not the watershed moment we were told that it was. Yeah. And the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think, exacerbated what was already true. So now Russia's a capitalist country, very much so. For 30 years now. So it's an economic force in the world. It's a military force in the world. But how different are its politics? I mean, it did defend Syria. When I think of Syria, I get so depressed. But because they were bogged down in Ukraine, they couldn't help Syria. And so that coup collapsed the government. And now you have the jihadists that the U.S. and the West use as proxies are now running Syria and have relations with Israel. It's horrible what happened. But I'm rambling a little bit. But I think you're absolutely right. This idea that 1945 was a seminal moment, but not in the way we thought. So we have these BRICS, and they want a multipolar world. They want to get away, it's true, from the maniac United States, this rogue state, more rogue now with the current president and his own peculiarities. But still, as long as capitalism reigns, a nation like Israel can still do what it wants to do. And that's why the world has not come, aside from talking, there has not been the collective action that there should be against Israel.
Yeah, I got to be honest, that surprised me. That's what I'm saying. My take on history was wrong. I did not think that this could take place. I was legitimately surprised. And as you point out, or as the article points out, all of these states, even though they have loud condemnations, it doesn't affect what they do. I mean, I love the way he puts it, saying, despite the fact that they're what the UN literally detailed as a genocide, sexual abuse, starvation, murder, all of these things being detailed very clearly by the United Nations, and most likely will be also detailed by the ICJ when they finally get around to making their ruling on genocide. But it doesn't affect anything. Like that's just amazing to me. It doesn't affect behavior. It's amazing. Like, it's astonishing. What do you say to people who, when you bring up BRICS, and they would say, well, you shouldn't criticize BRICS because, they're trying to get a different economic union, and Russia and China and India and South Africa They're trying to do something different, and they're trying to construct a new world. And because they're trying to construct a new world, they are above and beyond any sort of criticism. And ultimately, it's the U.S. fault. So any problem or anything that takes place needs to take place in the U.S. What do you say to people who make that argument?
Well, anybody can be criticized. No one's sacrosanct. Yeah. And even countries which you may respect otherwise, may support their actions otherwise, you can still question. It's like human beings. There's nobody above being questioned. This idea, I think many people are so desperate to have some counterweight to the U.S. that whenever it appears, feel like they cannot have any critique of these other states. And you can. Of course you can. Does China need Israel? I mean, China's this economic colossus. Does it really need Israel? I mean, suppose they didn't do business with Israel anymore. Would their economy be impacted? But, so I believe these questions can and should be asked, and you can make demands of anyone. Israel should be cut off from the rest of the world. Israel should not be able to participate in the Olympics or the World Cup. Speaking of South Africa was treated in the last years of the apartheid state, Israel should be banned. BDS, boycott, divest, sanction. And Israel should be treated as a rogue state by the entire world and should be cut off politically, financially, culturally, in sports, in every way possible. So should be the demand. And nobody should shrink from it. And these countries aren't perfect. No one's perfect. It's look what Brazil played a role in took the lead role in occupying Haiti in the early O's, which was a disaster for Haiti. So when people talk about, and Lula was president at the time, he was this great leftist hero. Well, he wasn't in Haiti. And I think and people should say that. At the same time, I'm glad that, China can cut the U.S. out and get soybeans from Brazil and then tell Donald Trump to go F himself. But that doesn't make either of those countries some paragon of virtue. People still, I think, personalize too many things, like personalizing Hitler, or saying Xi Jinping has done great things for China. Yes, he has. But we have to be very careful and not idealize any individual or any state. So I think it's a good conversation to have.
Yeah, they're just states. They're just countries. I mean, I don't get this thing of we criticize the United States all the time. And we live in the United States. Well, usually I'm in the U.S.
Well, you know what it is. People are so angry about the United States and the collective West and all the horrible things they've been responsible for. So I think there's this desire. Can't anybody stop this horrible rogue state? And when other countries don't, there's I don't know. I think there's a hesitancy to criticize these countries at the other pole. And we want to see a multipolar world. That's the best thing for humanity. But it doesn't make those countries perfect or beyond reproach.
Agreed. The other article is an article you wrote. And I read through this article, and I agree with every last word that was in this article. And my audience knows me. I argue with everybody that comes on this channel. So for me to say, yes, this is dead on. The article, Black Agenda Report, is called White Power. And this is so prescient considering what is happening right now with Trump. And to give context, Donald Trump is claiming that Antifa, an organization that doesn't exist, is the rationale for him to effectively crack down on what he is going to consider speech. Now, part of this, you can look at Colbert. You can look at, what is his name? Not Brian Kilmeade. You can look at Jimmy Kimmel, who just took place, where Jimmy Kimmel said effectively they're trying to force this notion on the left, and this guy is most likely a MAGA guy. Okay, that's not sufficient to get somebody fired, and yet it was sufficient because Donald Trump effectively threatened to pull the license for the organization. This is Rolling Stone's talking about Kimmel getting fired. It says, in the hours leading up to the decision to pull Jimmy Kimmel, two sources familiar with the matter said senior executives at ABC, its owner Disney, and affiliates convened emergency meetings to figure out how to minimize the damage. Multiple execs felt that Kimmel had not actually said anything over the line. Two sources say that the threat of Trump administration's retaliation loomed. And so they effectively snatched him off air. This is while Brian Kilmeade has openly called for the mass murder of homeless people on air, on Fox, whereas he gently rubbed the Trump administration and MAGA. All right. One last point for this. After all of this talk about implementing First Amendment rights and everything else and saying we're going to fight for the First Amendment, we believe in the First Amendment, you get Trump putting out this tweet. If I can find the tweet right here. I am pleased to inform many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standard of practices. Now, again, Antifa is not an organization. It doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist. It's like people think that somebody has the word Antifa on their office door or on their letterhead, that somebody calling themselves Antifa. It's anti-fascism. It's a very old term. It does not refer to any particular group or person, but it's part of Donald Trump's imagination. But what makes it so you can sneer and snicker that he's going to attack an organization that does not exist, but he's going to attack the left. Right. That's what it means. That is what it means. The left are, and everybody's going to be called left. You know, when I say leftist, I have an idea in my head of anti-imperialism, anti-capitalism. But for them, left is going to be anybody who disagrees with them, anybody who tries to challenge them, and everyone will be called Antifa that they don't like. And, you know, in this taking people off the air, they're scared of Trump, and that's white power. And no one has stood up to him. You know, the big networks. I mean, people who seem to be powerful, big law firms, television networks, Ivy League schools with billionaires on their boards. All of the liberal class has folded up like a cheap lawn chair to Trump, to white power. One of the points I made in my article is that Trump does things that are seemingly illogical. For example, I mentioned the tariff war with China, and China deciding to buy from agricultural products from other countries, so they get soybeans from Brazil and cattle from Australia. And you would think that the U.S. would say, well, let's not hurt our people. And all these farmers who are now, you know, we see them on social media crying, praying that Trump is putting them out of business, putting them out of business by targeting their workers. Agricultural work is done by immigrants, many of whom are undocumented. And past Republican presidents would protect those people. They'd say, we're going to crack down on immigration, but we can't hurt our farmers. Not Trump. It's all his priority is getting non-white people, as many as possible, out of the United States. That's white power. He protects whiteness as he sees it, and he does not want to be challenged. So that's why I called it white power. And the people who knuckle under believe in it too. I mean, ultimately, if you're not doing anything, if you're not saying anything, well, how much different are you? You know, this whole Charlie Kirk, it's like a bizarro world. For the last week since Charlie Kirk was killed, and they've said they're going to crack down on hate speech. It's interesting to me because he was very clear. There's no such thing as hate speech.
Yes.
You know, the First Amendment. And now they're like, screw what he said. And his death is very murky to me. I am not accepting this narrative. And I believe it's important to have facts at one's command. But these, you know, lone nut gunmen, who and they're trying to say the shooter, the young man who's been arrested, was a leftist. There's no proof of him having any ties to any left organizations. Apparently his roommate was trans, and okay, well, they're the new bogeymen, trans people. But it's very odd, and leaving out the fact that he came from a gun-loving family. I don't know if you saw the pictures his mother took off of Facebook herself with guns all the time. So this is conservative Utah. And what inspired him to do this, we don't know. But on Discord, this weird language that I was not familiar with at all. But it's not left wing. I'll just put it that way. So they were already. So we have a president who said, we're going to get as many people of color out of the United States as we possibly can. We don't care if it hurts the farmers who voted for me. We want to make America white again. And so they're getting out. So China, cutting off your nose to spite your face. We're going to have these tariffs against China, which hurt a lot of American businesses, but they don't care. That's their priority. But what do we see so-called liberals doing? Ezra Klein in the New York Times. What a butt kisser. I mean, I'm sorry. There's no other way to describe him. I'm grieving for Charlie Kirk. It was so terrible. We can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing what?
He claimed that he did politics the right way. I mean, Charlie Kirk was a degenerate racist, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ. Like, this was not a good person. And they're acting like he was some kind of civil rights icon. Having him, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of him and Jesus, him and Malcolm X shaking hands.
Horrible. And I'm going to tell you something else. One of the things Turning Point USA, his group, did, they attacked a lot of professors. People were doxxed, harassed, fired. So this is doing politics the right way. What is Ezra Klein talking about? But Ezra Klein and other liberals, they want to stay at the top. They have access. You have a column in the New York Times. You get to write some stupid book about abundance. We should talk about that sometime, some neoliberal gobbledygook. That's all it amounts to, being promoted by Democrats. So as far as I'm concerned, Ezra Klein is a follower of white power as much as Trump. And I'm tired of people also who, on the one hand, want to say Trump's dangerous, a dictator, authoritarian, a fascist, Hitler's cousin, blah, blah, blah. But when they have an opportunity to stand up, they don't take it. Or they just go along. These networks, ABC settled with Trump, CBS settled with. These are lawsuits they definitely would have won. But they're not even bothering now. The TikTok, and I want to say TikTok is not a Chinese company. That is to say, it's not from the
China wasn't running TikTok.
Yes, but it's just been turned over to Zionists.
Yep.
So TikTok people, what they should have said is, we're out. We're out of the U.S. We're not cutting any deals with you. You're in a market we're not going to have. But what did they do? As the authors say, they went along with the money. So now it's completely a Zionist organization. And I want to say something else about Trump. I had a semi-argument with a friend about Trump, still back in 2017. Trump's listening to Putin. I said, listen, the foreign government that controls Trump is Israel.
Yes.
His chief of staff worked for Netanyahu, I recently found out.
Susie Wiles.
Yes. So that's what we're talking about, this naked power, this white power structure. And it's a white power structure. The big law firms and the big colleges, Berkeley out in California just turned over the names of 160 people who had some vague accusation of being anti-Semitic, meaning they participated in Palestine solidarity actions or anti-Israel actions. They just gave these names over to the U.S. government, didn't tell the people their names had been turned over for weeks. That's white power. So I think that's something that cannot be forgotten, that might makes right and white makes right. and everybody who doesn't stand up is complicit.
You also make the point about these like rich people who you like. I give you an example. Zuckerberg is a really good example of this. All of these people go and sit, kiss the ring, and you would think that, okay, well, these people were liberals under the Democrats, and now all of a sudden under a fascist. And I'm calling him a fascist because that's the way he's acting at this point. If you are going to say, we are going to define certain speech as anti-Semitic, and we will make that definition. Now, keep in mind, this is the same guy, same habitual liar that murdered 11 Venezuelans in a boat and claimed, well, they were drug dealers, which makes no sense. The notion that you're going to drive a speedboat from Venezuela to the U.S. with 11 people in it, as opposed, it doesn't make any sense on his face. But that doesn't matter, though. He just says it. So this same habitual liar is going to be the one who makes the determination of what's anti-Semitic speech versus not, or criticism of him. And all of these things are supposed to be off limits. Zuckerberg going there and on the hype mic saying, hey, I didn't know the number you wanted me to give. Zuckerberg is a billionaire many times over. And yet he still feels the need to do that. And it's not just Zuckerberg. Many of those people were effectively going there, kissing the ring. And as you pointed out, the university, that sucks. You would think that the university has a responsibility to the kids at the university. Apparently not so much. They just gave over the names, having no idea what the administration is going to do with those names.
What this also points out is the Democratic presidents, and I'm not saying we want another Trump-like figure, but it also shows the power of the presidency, which yes, Democrats never want to use on behalf of their people, on behalf of the policies and initiatives that Democratic voters want them to carry out. They're always helpless. Well, the parliamentarians said we couldn't do this, and we wanted to raise the minimum wage, but actually we can't. And oh my God, we can't pass Build Back Better. Now we have a president who's bypassing Congress altogether, just bypassing them, even his own party, with executive orders. He says, I'll see you in court. And sometimes he wins and sometimes he loses. And what I hope is if there's ever a Democratic president again, that nobody falls for this, what we can't do, our hands are tied, you're asking for too much, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, or some nonsense meaning, screw you, we're not going to do what you want. I want people to remember this. It's a powerful office.
Yes.
And I don't want a president to have networks taking people off because they say off the air because they say something he doesn't like. But this shows what liars the Democratic presidents have been when they tell people that there's something they know their people want, and then they don't do it. It's because they don't want to. And that's because of the oligarchic class. Bernie Sanders is running around talking about oligarchs. Well, the Democratic Party has oligarchs. They're the ones kept him from getting the nomination twice. Yep. But that's white power too. So I just wanted to, I struggled with, the name of the title and what to call it. But I also write about the big tech billionaires, Tim Cook, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Bezos, yeah. Most of them before he was even inaugurated, they all gave $1 million personal for Trump's inauguration committee. Some of them turned up, Bezos and Zuckerberg and some others turned up at the inauguration. They, as powerful as they are, they also depend upon the US government to get things they want. And yes. So they are all colluding with the fascist. And that's white power as well. And I don't care that in the past they gave money to Democrats. Now they are making clear the new boss in town, the racist fascist bosses in town, and we are going to work with them. We're going to go along to get along. And that means they are going along with white power too. And if you're going to call Trump a fascist, you need to call them fascists as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think what people miss is that this is not about their quote unquote values. It's about cash. They're oligarchs. Mm-hmm. And oligarchs are going to want to stay near the power structure, and whatever their power structure is. They're not, whatever their personal preferences are, at the end of the day, they're going to align themselves in a way that they can continue to make more cash. In this case, you have all of these people that's come in and kiss the ring. I'm curious on something else. How far do you think he's going to take this? Laura Loomer, Trump whisperer, came out with this. And, I made a post pointing out that this is one of the most fascist things in the world. That for all intents and purposes, you are effectively going after an organization that doesn't exist to create a stalking course to go after people who you just don't like and who's putting out things and thoughts that you just don't personally like. And you are trying to sick Pam Bondi on these people. I don't know if you've seen her statement where Trump is like, he wants to go after Code Pink because he didn't like the fact that Code Pink caught him in a restaurant and was screaming at him. He wants to go after apparently a reporter because he didn't like the question that the reporter asked him. Laura Loomer comes out and I think says the quiet part out loud, which is what I think is true for the cultists that are backing Donald Trump on this. They don't care about America. They're treasonous at their very core. What they want is control and power. And if they can institute a fascist government, they would do so in a heartbeat. And if Donald Trump was the guy to do it, they would back him 1,000%. I was thinking about this over the last few nights while I couldn't sleep. I have to say, I do want President Trump to be a dictator. The left thinks he is. And I want the right to be as devoted to locking up and silencing our violent political enemies as they pretend we are. Well, that's the word violent, right? But violent is contextual because they say that anybody who criticized Charlie Kirk was effectively getting Charlie Kirk killed. This is nonsense. I've had enough of the left only thinking we will defund them, prosecute them, lock them up, and dismantle their power for generations to come. It just needs to happen. I suspect Donald Trump agrees with everything Loomer just said there.
Well, they do everything she wants. Do you know there was a program that brought kids from Gaza to be brought here for medical treatment. And the Trump administration, it wouldn't have happened if the administration hadn't allowed it. Laura Loomer goes on Twitter, says all the little kids are Hamas, and they end the program just like that. And I want to say this notion of they're doing what liberals do. Liberals do not have that kind of apparatus. Now, I don't know why. They're liberals with money. I mean, Kamala Harris, I'm using the term liberal very loosely, though. Lest we forget, Kamala Harris raised $1 billion for her dumb campaign. So they're Democrats with a lot of money. There's nothing to keep Democrats from developing this kind of apparatus where in a matter of days, they come up with a list of people who should lose their jobs, a list of people they want to defund, attacking the 501c3, that's the next thing that's going to come down the pike, taking away the 501c3 status of organizations who they do not like. A brief conversation yesterday, I found out a professor in Texas was fired from his job because he spoke at a socialism conference, not at that campus, by the way, but they just fired him because someone said he's a socialist. And that's what they want to do. That's white power. It's capitalist power. Yes, it's right-wing power, but I'm saying it's white power. And I'm calling out the people who are colluding with it. These butt kissers, the Ezra Kleins of the world. You're with them or you're against them. I'm sorry. And crying about Charlie Kirk tells me you're with them. It's a funny thing. Everything I want is off the table politically. I don't want the U.S. to come up with the pretext for war with Venezuela. I don't want the U.S. Murdering, and it's hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza, by the way. People need to stop using that 50, 60,000 numbers. It's closer to 500,000. Some people say it is 500,000. I don't want that to happen. I don't want my neighborhood to be gentrified. There are all these things I want. I don't want mass incarceration. I'm told you can't have that. You can just forget it. I don't want most of our budget to be for the military. I don't want the U.S. overthrowing governments. All of these things I'm told, well, you can't have that. You can't have that. The Democrats, no, they can't, do any of the things you want. Mamdani comes along here in New York to talk about some of those things. And we're told, well, rich people don't want him, so you can forget that. And now that it looks like he's going to win, the rich people are trying to co-opt him. Bloomberg met with him. Some of the billionaires now giving him money. So for me and millions of other people who are told that the things we want are not going to happen and you need to just sit down and shut up, for us in particular, to be told that we can't speak up at all and we have to lionize this piece of crap, this Charlie Kirk guy who I hadn't paid attention to. I didn't know that he said, well, somebody's got to get shot to protect the Second Amendment. He said that.
He said kids. Just to be clear, kids. If kids needed to get shot to protect the Second Amendment, fair enough.
Shootings.
Yeah.
And, that he said he didn't like empathy. It's a new age term. It's very damaging. I don't like empathy. Well, don't tell me to be empathetic when about him. So his death is being used we're all going to be treated like this Antifa that exists in Trump's imagination. And for some of the major law firms in the country to have signed these agreements with Trump, that they will have pro bono clients of his choosing.
Yes.
Among other things.
It's pathetic.
It is. It is. So everybody it's the money. It's all these people want their money. They want their power. They want their positions. So they go along. So they are adherents to white power as much as anybody else, as much as anybody wearing a MAGA hat.
Black people were better off in slavery and before the civil rights. Black women don't have the brain power to have a conversation. I mean, like there's a litany of videos and people are acting like these videos don't exist. They're lionizing somebody without ever actually quoting the things that he said in oceans of videos. It's amazing. Just bizarre.
These people they're complicit and they're cowardly. And I'm just calling them out. Okay, you wanna go down that road? Well, I'm calling you out. How does fascism exist? Fascism exists when everybody goes along with it. Fascism thrives when the liberal class is weak and collaborationist. So you're all fascists, in my opinion, and all of you believe in white power as much as somebody wearing a MAGA hat at a Trump rally.
Margaret Kimberley, you have my deepest appreciation, as always.
Oh, wait. I want to show. I always show my book.
Please do.
I hope people have seen it now. Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents. And I contributed to 2 newly published books, Confronting Counterinsurgency. What's the full title? Cop Cities and Democracies, Terrors, edited by Joy James. It's an amazing book. And this is about From the Flag to the Cross, Fascism American Style. Myself, Shama Swant, Chris Hedges, Richard Wolff, among others. So
go ahead.
These books. Yes, From the Flag to the Cross, Aura Books, Confronting Counterinsurgency, Pluto Press.
Check her out. Her out. And just so people know, Margaret Kimberley, she's senior columnist and editor for Black Agenda Report and author of course, Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents. Please send me those books so I can put them into your bio, just so people would know. And when I do the bio, I can just give a rundown of it.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And you can follow Margaret on Freedom Ride blog, and that is on Twitter. Thank you for this. I always appreciate these conversations, and the audience always love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamal. Good to see you.
Bye-bye. All right. Margaret Kimberley is fantastic. Always love to have her. She's a fan favorite, and she's a favorite of mine. Let's go to the chat. Since we have, let's see, Sarah is going to be on in about 15 minutes. Let's do the chat, and I'm going to hit another story before we get to Sarah. Sir Mike Salat, a day. I know by China being generous. After listening to the author of An Economic Hitman on John Kwiatkowski show, they were practicing the same thing. So I would tell you, like I told Jerry, I am skeptical of countries just being generous for the sake of being generous. I think countries are realists. And even though China may have a different philosophy in the way that it operates, where it looks for win-win relationships, you're looking for a win-win relationship. You're not just, hey, I'm giving you this just to give you this. I'm giving you this because I'm also getting something out of it, but we're balancing our wants. Now, if you are functioning in the way that the US does, where, hey, I'm going to put a military base in your country, where you have this extractive relationship. Hey, I'm going to work with Iran up until the point Iran wants more of its own oil, in which case now I'm going to overthrow the government of Iran. These are extractive relationships. Venezuela, I'm just going to knock over the government. In Syria, we're just going to steal the oil. Compare that to a win-win relationship, and obviously the win-win relationship is going to be better. If you put a hospital, if you build a highway, if you build a road, a trail, a railroad station, a CDC, these things are directly beneficial to aid the integrity of your country and the people of your country. And that is going to create a huge amount of goodwill in that country. So yeah, there may be a balance of something that China is getting out of it, but they're given real tangible things in the context in a way that's not the way we operate in this country. I mean, think about the COVID vaccine. And I know a lot of you may disagree with it. Okay, whatever. But the US was pushing Brazil not to use China's vaccine or Russia's vaccine, saying that China was using it for a geopolitical reasons. Effectively, hey, we're okay with 700,000 of your people dying. I think they were like second largest behind the United States under Bolsonaro. But we don't want you to use this vaccine from China that they're giving away at a certain price. I mean, it's that, right? If I'm making a deal with you and I'm trading something with you that is actually valuable to you, and we're both getting something out of it, that's not a negative. That's a win-win deal. Those do exist. So even if you don't want to look at China as, well, they're just giving things away, I don't look at them that way either. I look at them as a realist country that has decided upon a plan of action that has ingratiated itself to countries around the world to the benefit of both countries. That's what I look at. Yeah, they're a realist country. At least that's my take. Spirit warrior. The Zionist control of the global monetary system of the US dollar. Read The Creature from Jackal Island, who controls the insurance of the money makes the law. Yeah, I don't buy your premise. Look, the reason I don't buy the premise is because I know some people think that the United States or that Israel controls the US. I just don't buy that premise. The US and Israeli policy dovetail. They are working in concert. Donald Trump agrees with everything that Israel is doing. There is no disagreement. Anytime you hear something like Trump grumbling in the background, think back to Joe Biden grumbling in the background. I'm doing everything I can and Netanyahu is out of control. That is policy. It is the objective to have Israel look as if it's rogue and look as if there's some separation between the United States. So when Israel does things in the Middle East and is effectuating U.S. policy, that the U.S. can say, well, we didn't know anything about it. We don't like that they're doing that. That sucks that just happened. The attack that just took place on Qatar, the United States had to be involved for that attack to work. But what was the response of the U.S.? We didn't know they were going to do that. We didn't know. They just did it. Donald Trump is angry. He's very pissed off behind the scenes. He's, gritting his teeth and beating his wife. He's that angry. Nonsense. I don't buy that at all. For all intents and purposes, they are our colony of squatters. They are our tip of the spear in the Middle East, and we give them billions of dollars, not because we love them, but because they're serving an objective every bit as much as Ukraine was serving an objective, and we were giving them hundreds of billions of dollars. So I understand your point, but I don't buy this tail wagging the dog stuff. There's a reason that Israel put hundreds of billions of dollars into the United States political system. If people agreed with you, you would not have to do that. So this is not, we're under control. There is a dovetail in relationship in regards to what the U.S. and what Israel wants. And for as long as that dovetails, we will continue to give them a ton of money. And they will continue to give politicians a portion of that money back in campaign donations. The other part of this, though, is something that Netanyahu said recently. The United Nations have finally come out and said this is a genocide and put it in detail. The ICJ may very well use the documentation from the United Nations to bolster their own case against Israel. So you may have two large organizations effectively pointing out reality for what reality is. You're murdering, raping, killing shooting babies, blowing up hospitals, etc. You're a rogue actor. You're the closest thing to Nazis since the Nazis. Israel, Netanyahu came out with a speech recently and said Israel needs to create its own weapons base. Effectively, we need to not rely on America. We need to not rely on the United States. Okay, well, that's interesting. Now, this may be the case because he can look at the polling just like everybody else and see that the support for Israel has diminished significantly in the United States as they've been out there murdering children. He can also see that even on the right, the space of which that you would think that Israel will command mostly, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, hell, at this point, it seems like even Charlie Kirk was having doubts, especially in the conversations he was having with people behind the scenes. So all of these people are effectively on the right, creatures of the right, and yet have started to look at murdering of babies and say, hey, man, killing 300,000 babies makes me feel a certain way. If you only murdered 100,000, then me, Charlie Kirk, I'd be okay. But 300,000 is too much. I hope you get my point. If he feels that the political situation in the United States is tilting in a particular direction, then in his mind, he may think that the United States is not entirely a trustworthy actor going forward. Now, I think he's wrong. All of these creatures that are in DC, for all intents and purposes, back the murder of anybody that they want. Full court, meaning they back them full bore. There is no deviation. They have complete support, Democrats and Republicans, in genocide. They're okay with Israelis murdering babies for sport, putting it on video and laughing at the baby that they just murdered, the ghostly figure walking in the desert through the rubble that they shoot with a sniper rifle for hashtag reasons. I hope you get my point. I know you think it's the tail wagging the dog. I don't buy the tail wagging the dog thing. I could be wrong. I could be talking on my ass. So don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I have God's point of view on this. I'm not in the machinery where I would know. But there is a direct relationship of who pays who. We pay them. We give them political support. We give them guns. Israel is not a major power. Israel is just a country of 8 million people. If it wasn't for what the United States gave Israel, they would be nothing. As I pointed out before, when Donald Trump farts, the very air that they breathe comes out of his ass. And that would be true for any US president. So if Joe Biden at any point said, stop, they would have stopped. So I do understand where you're coming from, but I just disagree. But again, I don't have God's knowledge. I could be wrong. Well, thank you, Mai. That's because the left and the right both sleep in the same bed and share the same STDs. Yes. 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 What did Jerry say? He pulls out too fast. He can't get anybody pregnant. But yes. Agreed. The well-dressed nerd, brave. Love Margaret, but y'all bugging. Everything is white power. I don't think she said everything is white power, but okay, I'll keep going. Guess YouTube is white power. Not a fan, but Kirk wasn't a degenerate racist. Yes, he was. You need Carlin. I don't know who Carlin is. Yes, he was. Brave. I don't know if you've seen the things that he has said, but I would say look up his videos. The stuff that he says is not coming from somebody who is non-racist. I have no idea where you're getting that from. He has oceans of videos of him making just sick, degenerate, deranged, racist commentary. Unless we just have different ideas of what racist is. Kwame, Spirit Warrior. Israel continues the United States manifest destiny policies. Yes. We're very similar in that. Like, I don't know if people fully recognize the similarities. The United States takes as a settler colonial country or nation. We expand all the way to the borders of California. It is our manifest destiny. God prescribed this. God said we were going to be able to do this. Israel, settler colonial. And what do? They want to create their greater Israel by effectively expanding into all of these other states. Same difference, right? I see my guest in the background. Well, one more before I go to my guest. This is Brave. Yeah, Brave. All right. That's not what Kirk said. Totally out of context. You are so wrong. You're so wrong. Hit him on what he's on the reality he said, not repeating bad faith takes. Got me here defending that dude. Hey, nobody got you here defending that dude. You are defending that dude. And again, there are oceans of video. When he's saying Black women don't have the sense to be able to have a conversation with him, we makes a point of saying when he gets into an airplane, he wonders if there's a Black pilot because he feels some kind of way about, there being a Black pilot. You honestly think that somebody who says stuff like this on the regular, yeah, we disagree, Brave. We greatly disagree. I'm going to go to my guest because I don't want her waiting. To be fair, she's here 3 minutes early, so I'm okay. You're not late. Sarah Bils. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Sarah Bils, host of DD Geopolitics. They do fantastic work. I say it every time she comes here because you guys actually do fantastic work.
Thank you.
Yeah, a good morning so far.
You're the first thing that I'm doing this week, so yes.
It's like, oh, I feel so special. I'm the first person.
I wake up tomorrow on Thursday.
Well, I feel your pain on Sundays. I guess Sundays for me. Saturdays
Oh
for me.
yeah. We're even. We're even. It's fine.
You look like hell. It's like, thanks for that.
I look like hell on Thursdays. You can look like hell on Saturdays.
Well, you never look like hell though. You're usually perky and on pace. Where should we start today? Where should we start? God, man, I don't want to hit Charlie Kirk again because we kind of beat that into the ground and people are still having a conversation. I know where I want to go. This. Where do you think Trump is going with this? Right here. I think this is one of the most fascist things that I've seen, at least this week. I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organization. I will be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I hate when he says that. It annoys the shit out of me every time he writes that. So this president who came in attesting to free speech, who just got Jimmy Kimmel fired, for some, and just to show what Jimmy Kimmel said, because I don't want you guys.
Oh, good, you have it. Good.
I do have the clip. Yeah,
I watched it a few times because I was like, I'm not getting it, but
because there's nothing there to get. There's nothing there to get. But this is what Jimmy Kimmel said, and this is what got him fired. And again, keep in mind, the executives saw nothing wrong with the statement.
Right, his monologue gets approved before he goes on.
Oh, does it? He has to get it approved.
Yeah.
I never got my monologue approved. I just did the monologue.
Yeah, because
I used to on the radio show. I was like, dude, you can't say that shit. But this is what Kimmel said. Nothing that he's saying here is problematic. This is them trying to deify, for all intents and purposes, what I consider to be an asshole. And anything that is being said, even to the smallest degree, is now they're going after. And he's using the weight of the federal government to threaten ABC or Disney, whichever one you want to poke the blame at, in order to get rid of him.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
By the way, I saw the video when that came out also.
And I said the same thing. I was like, well, he doesn't give a shit. Why do I have to?
Exactly. It's virtue signaling. They're using this as a political weapon. I guess the catch becomes using it as a political weapon for what?
That happened the day after.
Yep.
It was either the day after or the day after the day after. So it's either 2 days after or the day after. And that's literally like his reaction.
Rolling Stones, just to nail this part down, Rolling Stones points out.
Yeah, somebody said Trump went golfing during his vigil. He sure did. He missed the vigil for Charlie Kirk.
Because he doesn't care. This is just a politicized device for them. In the hours leading up to the decision to pull Jimmy Kimmel, two sources familiar with the matter said senior executives at ABC, its owner Disney, and affiliates convened emergency meetings to figure out how to minimize the damage. Multiple executives felt that Kimmel had not actually said anything over the line, two sources said, but the threat of Trump's administration retaliation loomed. So the president of the United States had feelings about something.
I think that people, even in the audience, are getting like really focused on the wrong thing. It's not even about what Jimmy Kimmel said. You guys understand that, right? I hate Jimmy Kimmel. I think his show is stupid. It's like boomer slop. Nobody watches that crap to get news or anything like that, except for boomers that ingest slop. They fired Jimmy Kimmel to see if they could. They're consolidating power and opinion, and any dissension is going poof. That's what it is. I can't remember the congressman's name, please forgive me, but he leads the FCC, and he's the one who twisted the screws. He twisted the screws on a company called Nexstar, which is an ABC affiliate, who then pulled ABC and said, we won't be airing you. Once that happened, ABC became in a bind because Nexstar owns a lot of stations across the United States. And so ABC was basically strong-armed into firing Jimmy Kimmel by our Congress, not by anybody else, by our Congress. Okay, so this is to show, this is also a warning to anybody else who wants to say anything about anything on TV. They could suffer the same fate. And that's what it is. It's consolidation of opinion. It's a consolidation of narrative. He didn't say anything wrong. He played Trump's own video.
Yep. And
then he went on, and after you paused, I think that another part that they're upset about is when he said, that's how a child mourns a goldfish. I think that's maybe what they were upset about. But even then, I don't understand why they're so offended.
I think it's a few things. He's ribbing Trump.
Sorry, this is the fuck your feelings party.
Well, they were
a lot of feelings.
Yeah, right. They were that party. I can show you speech after speech where Trump advanced. We're the party of free speech. We believe in free speech. And now anything, quote unquote, being defined as anti-Semitic, anything that besmirches the reputation of a guy who had a besmirched reputation, all of these things are now off limits. And they're dragging lists of trying to get people fired. Mind you, Killamede, as I pointed out in my video the other day, was calling for the murder of homeless people in mass.
He didn't get fired.
No, he didn't get fired.
But that's the thing that you should show. Like, that's the comparison that we should continuously drive home. We have Jimmy Kimmel, who played a Donald Trump video and then kind of called, we'll say in the worst case scenario, he called Charlie Kirk a goldfish, even though he didn't. That's the worst case scenario. We have a Fox News token, excuse my language, saying, well, I don't know what to do with the homeless people. Let's just kill them. And that stands. That should tell you everything you need to know about what's going on. Because it's not about violent speech. It's not about hate speech. It's about speech we hate.
Yeah.
So that's what it's really about.
Add to that, American military in various cities across the United States. Add to that a power structure that seems to be working in line with Donald Trump, meaning they're leaning into it. I mean, is this American fascism?
Well, have you been watching? See, I have kind of just chalked it up to an ineptitude, and I don't know. I hadn't really developed a full. Sorry, it's the dog in the morning, but I haven't really developed a full opinion on this administration in terms of how it was working. I've been watching Max Blumenthal, his media appearances over the last few days. Aside from the Charlie Kirk stuff, the way he's talking about the inner workings of the admin is downright terrifying.
Explain.
He was on Judge Napolitan. No, sorry. This clip is from the InfoWars. Yes. This was the day before yesterday. He said he was going over what goes on in the background, and basically, Susie Wiles, which, I mean, I've known this, but Susie Wiles was working on Benjamin Netanyahu's 2020 election campaign. Is she still on those payrolls? We don't know. But anyways, she did work on his 2020 election campaign and helped him get reelected. And we do know that the CIA has always had a very, very big blind spot, especially in West Asia after the bombing of Beirut. They heavily rely on Mossad for their intelligence in that sector, in that AOR. Well, Ratcliffe is just basically taking notes or verbatim statements from the Mossad and then feeding them into Trump's ear.
Right.
That's terrifying. That's scary.
Yeah. Max also said something that I greatly disagree with. He pointed out on InfoWars that people that he talked to in the Trump administration said that Trump was scared of Israel and the influence that they wielded in the United States. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like Joe Biden. Or like, meaning Randall Source comes out and says Joe Biden is doing everything in his power to get the hostages free and to end the conflict. Joe Biden is doing everything in his power to stop Israel from hitting Rafah. Joe Biden is doing everything in his power. And you find out after the fact, none of that stuff was true. It was obvious it wasn't true. But behind the scenes, it wasn't true. Or you would see Axios. Donald Trump is very angry about Israel hitting Qatar. Is he? I mean, how could he be very angry
about Charlie Kirk? You think he cares about Qatar?
No, exactly. That's my point, right? Like, I don't buy this nonsense or this idea that Donald Trump and Israel are on opposing sides, or that there is a division between them. Trump has made it very clear that he wants to get access and ethnically cleanse the area every bit as much as Israel does. So does it help to put something out saying, no, I'm only doing this because, especially when you have a lot of your supporters that have started to turn on this idea of, yeah, man, 300,000 dead babies is too much. 100,000, I was there with you, but 300,000, I can't. It's too far. It's too much. Like, if Kirk himself was turning on this issue, which according to Tucker,
exactly, but you also remember what else this is serving. This is elevating Kirk's death above the death of all others. So there's a lot of elements at work here that are like psychological elements and propaganda that's at work here. And you're exactly right about the children, just everybody in general in Gaza. But this is elevating Charlie Kirk above all of that. That's one of the points, is to say we don't care about Palestinians. One of our own was just killed. Yeah. And it also centralizes that sort of nationalist thing where it's like, we matter. Our lives matter more than the lives in the Levant.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is that they're instituting a thought police of sorts.
Oh, I'm sure you have an idea, but oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's insane the way that they're targeting people. You knew this was going to happen. I mean, this isn't science rockets. They start to make lists. Nobody responsible is involved in making the list. There's no criteria. There's no rules for the list. It's just put somebody on here that you think did something wrong. And then the slippery slope was made and everybody went slip and sliding down the hill. Like it's like a wet dream for these propagandists. It really, really is.
Let's move to Iran for a bit. So
I don't know anything about what's going on there.
Okay.
Well, we can try.
Okay. Well, this came out. I think this came out today. Iran and the European ministers make little progress as renewed UN sanctions loom, diplomats say. So Iran apparently said, hey, we'll work with the IAEA as long as you don't put the sanctions back on. If you put the sanctions on, we're out of this. And they're trying to get they're trying to get the E3, effectively Germany, Britain, France, to push sanctions for 6 months. That's what Europe is offering. Hey, we'll push this for 6 months if you work in coordination with the IAEA. Iran is apparently being somewhat dodgy with this. It's like, yeah, we'll work with you, but we need to figure out a platform and a way in which we're going to work with you. And so the E3 nations are like, hey, we're going to put the sanctions on, with Iran's believing full well, they're probably going to put the sanctions on anyway. This is so strange to me. I understand they don't want sanctions. I get that. But I don't know. I get the sense that this is kind of like Russia, where you're kind of stuck with a model that there's no way out that box. And you're working with countries that under no circumstances.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Like, the writing's on the wall. The fate has been sealed. You can do things to kind of delay that faith and try to like make it look like you're a good faith actor. But at the end of the day, they're putting the sanctions on you. That's why we were like, you and I were both like, why are they signing this agreement? Like, they're just going to find another reason to put sanctions on, or the IAEA will give them a reason. Like, what are we doing here? And that might be one of the reasons why I haven't paid attention. Like, you let the IAEA back in after there was given, it wasn't concrete. I'm sure that the Iranians had more concrete evidence than me, but we had enough circumstantial evidence that the IAEA actually probably gave them wrong information due to Palantir software being ran by the IAEA to do predictive models about what Iran was doing with their nuclear program. That's what forced the IAEA to inspect. It was a Palantir program that gave them the prediction that that they were going to develop this uranium, and then they went in. So why are we letting them back in? Are we that afraid of sanctions?
It seems like they are. I mean, otherwise, it seems like they are. Like, it seems like it's. I mean, for one, let's be honest. The JCPOA, those sanctions shouldn't be implemented anyway. Those governments were supposed to protect Iran if Iran stuck with the deal, and Iran did stick with the deal. It was the Trump administration that pulled out the deal. So right off the bat, they are flagrantly just, untrustworthy in this context. Also, they're vassals of the United States who want those sanctions back on anyway. So I don't know. In my take, is like, you're going to get hit with this regardless. There's no way out of that box. You're stuck with this situation. And at the end of the day, you need to find ways to kind of get around the situation as it is, not, I don't know, letting an organization back in that you openly said got your scientists murdered. Yeah, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I want to, what time is it? Okay, we have time. Take a look at this. This is Colin Powell moment from Poland.
Oh, yeah.
I think you know this video.
Yeah.
This is one of them. 2 days ago, they tried to target Polish homes. This is one of them in a village called Wyryki in eastern Poland. 2 days ago.
Now, what you're seeing is the gentleman from Poland trying to blame the Russians for, I guess, a missile or drone hitting a house. Sarah?
It was a
Polish missile? Yeah, did a Russian rocket hit the house? Did Russia attack Lublin region in Poland?
No, it was Polish, either regular missiles or air defense missiles. Most likely air defense missiles. These people want a war. I don't know how else to explain this to people. They want a war. They want a war. And we probably have already memory hold this whole scenario and said either it was an accident that they went over the border, or, the other opinion is that they were done on purpose, that Russia did that on purpose, and Russia wants to invade Poland. Just like we've been saying for the last 2 years, they want to invade. See, guys, look, they want to invade. They want to invade. They want to kill Poles. They're going to take over Europe, guys. They're coming through Belarus. They're coming through Russia. They're coming through Ukraine. They're going to take us over. And then they get their pretty pictures. This is psychotic.
Yeah.
This is psychotic. But this should give people the understanding that we're getting Iranian sanctions. We don't have a choice. We're getting war with Russia. We don't have a choice. Israel is creating its Greater Israel project. We don't have a choice. As soon as people wake up to this stuff, maybe then they'll figure it out what's actually going on and how toxic and terrifying this administration is.
Well, they say he's a man of peace. They say
and let's be clear. Trump and Biden have armed the Poles to the teeth in preparation for this. So they know it too. This is not like a European endeavor. It is very much an American endeavor. Poland is now the frontier in front of Russia. Poland is the new Ukraine. And they will destroy it too if they have to. They don't care.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Thailand and Cambodia started war again last night.
I saw that. What was the spark that kicked that off?
Civilians at the border, probably the temples again.
I was just talking to Jerry Gray earlier today. He's a guest on China, and he was talking about how he's like, China is maintaining its calm and peace, but everywhere around China is on fire.
Yeah.
Like Cambodia is on the border.
Nepal.
Of course, the Philippines. Yeah, Nepal. That's another one where the Belt and Road would go through. Like all of these states just so happen, coincidentally, to be on fire at the exact same moment.
And people think Nepal was organic. It's so funny. It's so funny. It's just so bad. I think I wrote a post yesterday. It was like, I was just aggravated with people doxing each other. And I was like, you're not going to do shit. You're going to sit at home and sit behind your computer because that's what you guys always do. And that's what they're going to do this time while they walk us into World War III. Why do you think that Trump has been begging China and Russia to start denuclearization or to decrease their number of nukes? Because a huge war is coming and he is terrified that they're going to use nukes.
But that's so stupid, though. Like
he's stupid. I've given up. Like I was giving this administration the benefit of the doubt. They are stupid. They're either willfully stupid or they feign ignorance because it allows them kind of to do whatever it is that they want to do. But I am 100% positive that Trump is not a smart person. None of the people surrounding him are smart. Maybe Stephen Miller is academically smart, but he's a nutcase. But you know what I mean? Like nobody there is actually a smart person.
Yeah. Agreed. I used to call them dumb as a box of rocks all the time.
They're really bad. It's really, really bad. I don't know how bad people understand how bad it is. Like, I think that the most qualified person in the administration right now is Marco Rubio.
That's terrifying. If that's true, that's terrifying.
Ruby Wiles has worked all over the freaking Middle East to get them reelected and to hide human trafficking. And then we wonder why we're not getting Epstein files. Susie Wiles, Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel were all paid to be Qatari lobbyists to hide their human trafficking during the soccer FIFA tournament. And people think that they're the ones going to find out about the Epstein files?
And let's piggyback that with this. Zelensky is losing touch with reality. Now, every so often you get these articles. I think it was Time Life that made the point of saying Zelensky was messianic. He was out of his mind. He was crazy. Like they just trashed him in that article, right? Like when you call somebody messianic, you're like on another level, right? It's like this guy is in God mode.
It's pretty out there.
And now they just wrote straight out.
Charlie Kirk has taken that place. Charlie Kirk has taken up the Messiah mantle. So Zelensky will have to wait his turn again.
Yeah, Jesus coming to pick him up and taking him to heaven. Yeah. But that's a hell of a headline. Zelensky is losing touch with reality.
I'm sorry, who did you say printed this?
Who did this? Who wrote this article?
Oh, foreign policy. Foreign policy.
Okay, so it is foreign policy. Okay, yeah, that's a hell of a headline. It's hard for anyone to make sense of Ukrainian president's latest military reforms. Well, I think the way to make sense of it is he's getting desperate. Like, I give you an example. In Germany, when the Nazi government was falling, Goebbels wanted to put people in prison for 20 years, 30 years if they listened to British media. Okay, that's desperate. And the quote unquote reforms that Zelensky is passing is also reeks of desperation. Just to do a few of these. Crackdown on soldiers. A draft sought to impose harsh prison terms up to 12 years for desertion and broadly defined insubordination. Protests erupted in Kiev Independence Square with slogans like, quote, army service is not slavery, unquote. Actually, it is. It is just, a flat fact. The measure was quickly withdrawn after backlash, allowing young men to leave. Zelensky allowed men under 22 to leave the country. Instead of relief, Ukrainians reacted with alarm, fearing an exodus of young men that would cripple future mobilizations. And they did get an exodus of young men in that case.
Yeah.
He didn't want those people protesting, so he wanted those people out the country. Political missteps. The misalignment comes on top of humiliations abroad and at home. Zelensky walked into the White House unprepared, only to be sharply scolded by President Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. That was an old one. Triggering mass protests, dubbed the, quote, cardboard revolution, unquote. Zelensky was forced to retreat to save his position. Growing distrust. Of course, there are surveys that are coming out effectively saying that people want the war to be over with. It's over 70%, if not more at this point, even if it means negotiating territory away. Give me your thoughts on this. I mean, he's under pressure in a way that's, many of us can't quite fathom.
It's unraveling. I didn't even think of that you said, oh, they didn't want those younger people protesting, so they let them leave real quick. That's actually, I didn't think of it that way. That's really interesting. But even during then, they weren't letting them leave because the border guard said nobody has communicated that to us. Nobody told us that, even though it was
really.
Nobody's communicating to these soldiers pushed to the front. So they were like, we didn't know that. Like they were holding people back and sending them back. And where are they going to go? They do not want them in Poland. They do not want them in Belarus.
Mm-mm.
So where
even
are
Hungary,
they go?
They pissed all of these people off. Hungary, Belarus, like none of their neighbors on good terms.
They can't go to Hungary. No.
Yeah.
They did. They could in the beginning. They can't anymore.
Not anymore. Slovakia, they
don't
pissed
have
off.
asylum like we do. You can't just walk into somewhere and declare asylum, especially in the Eastern Europe.
In the very beginning, they were, like Hungary has a huge, a population of Ukrainians, but they've gotten to the point of saying they need to leave or, they need to get a job and like all this stuff. They're like, we're sick of paying for you. They pissed all of these countries off. So that's a good question. I don't know where they would go. Maybe other parts of Europe. I don't know. But at the end of the day, those 22-year-olds at some point are going to hit 23 and they are going to be ruthlessly conscripted if the war still continues. When you say it's unraveling, do you mean politically, militarily, or both?
Well, I don't think that politically there's anything to really speak of. I mean, the Rada kind of meets and hangs out and argues. I think that fell apart ages ago, the political actual machinations of Ukraine. It's kind of just chugging along. So it's obviously the military is unraveling. That's been unraveling for a while. I mean, we're getting feel-good stories about 8 months pregnant women on the front line. Like this is supposed to be some sort of achievement of Western civilization.
Yeah, that was grotesque. So
that shows you how far gone we are. Like that's when we get, how we get the stories about meet this 95-year-old man that works at Walmart. You're like, this is not a feel-good story. Right? Like, a brave old man that goes to work every day as a Walmart greeter. Like, this is not the same thing with the Ukrainian girls. I was like, this is not a feel-good story. This is not a story of achievement.
Yeah, it does seem to be unraveling. It seems that the manpower shortage at this point, the number of desertions, the number of people that have been killed are taking their toll. And you can see it on the front lines where I was having this conversation with Mark the other day where it's funny. I had Jim Jatras on. Jatras was like, Putin is messing up. And Mark was like, Putin is doing fine.
Mark Sloboda?
Yeah, Mark Sloboda.
Okay, great.
Mark's point of view had to do with this idea that, well, look, they're trying to keep casualties down from the standpoint of the Russian side. And they are moving slowly and inexorably. And the pace at which they're moving is increasing. The strategy is working. There's no point to change the strategy. They believe they could take whatever hits that Ukraine could give and they could prosecute the war. Jatras' thing was a little different. Jatras' point of view was like, put these people out their misery. The longer that this war goes on, the more of an opportunity for some kind of black swan event. Either a false flag or something else that NATO will try to get involved with dirty tricks in order to try to upset the apple cart. And so, meaning the longer you take, the more of an opportunity you give for something else to take place that escalates the war in a way that's unpredictable. And that this slow progress is a way for Putin to turn around and say, okay, are you finished yet? Can we still have negotiations? And his point was, you're never going to get negotiations out of these people. So meaning stop trying. Stop acting like you need.
I'm not sure what Jim's kind of line of thought is here. They're not going to stop They're not going to meet Russia's demands, even with Russia in the winning driver's seat. They're going to hem and haw and do their theatrics and whine and cry. And then they'll, at the end of the day, while all of that's happening, they'll be bombing each other and something will happen and be like, see, we can't make peace because Russia's mean or something. You know, that's what happens every time. There's like a drone strike or an errant drone hits a target. Or remember the last time they were having peace negotiations and Russia hit a military medal ceremony outside and they like lost their minds and were like, we can't make peace with these people. And it's like, what do you think they were going to do to a ceremony with hundreds of soldiers at it?
Right. Right. It's like, we're going to let these soldiers graduate and go kill Russians.
Yeah,
no.
We're going to let them get to the front line first. We'll kill them there. No, why would they do that? Come on.
Yeah. Those people were fair game. They were literally military personnel at that point.
But like that's what happens every time there's some sort of sob story event that happens, and then the Ukrainians say, "Look, we can't make peace with these people," and then they have to strike back, and then it's like it goes right back to where it was. It's like rinse and repeat these days.
But at some point, that military is going to collapse.
Oh yeah,
and it seems the speed at which that collapse is taking place.
I think it's coming. I think it will come within the next year and a half. That's why they're preparing Poland. They got to get Germany ready to go too. I mean, this is really madness if you think about it. It's really just like madness. We're rearming Germany while Russia is a war machine. What could go wrong?
They couldn't even shoot down a drone. Like, let's put that in perspective, right? They couldn't even take down a dummy drone.
Does anybody read history? Like, why are we rearming Germany and Japan?
Yeah, that's terrifying. Especially the Germany one. I guess the question becomes, will these governments collapse before?
They gave Japan typhoons. Did you see that?
I did see that. They gave Philippines typhoons.
Like, what?
The U.S. is going to use those countries as sponges.
Yeah.
Like missile sponges. That the way, I forget who described it that way. But effectively, all right, we need you to absorb the missiles that China is going to fire when this kicks off. And it's like, yeah, I guess I can kind of see it. And the same thing with Europe. Europe is going to get fed to the Russians. And they seem to have this fervent belief that the United States will get involved, that they will be forced to get involved if Europe is being eaten alive by the Russian military.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case with what's going on in Israel and how important Asia is. Like, the point right now is to make, it's basically saying, like, Europe, this is your war. You need to take care of your own war. I don't agree with that, but that's what's happening right now. We have our own war in Israel. We're taking care of that. You guys are dipping out on that. You're not doing the weapons that you promised. You got all those protests. We'll take care of the war in Israel. You guys take care of your war in Ukraine. I don't think it's going to work out the way that the Europeans need it to. I don't think that it can. I don't think that we can get involved in the capacity that they would need us to.
Yeah. I mean, it's short of a nuclear war. I mean, like, what, the U.S. is going to put 1 million men in Europe? Is that what we're going to do? And put another 100,000, 200,000 to go after Iran? Is that
Arsenal? Yes, it is the same war, two fronts, but that's they're not really, not that they're not looking at it that way. They can't acknowledge that it is that. Like, the public can't like the general public can't understand that it's the same front or the same war on two fronts. They can't they won't allow them to. Does that make sense? Because making them interconnected changes the dynamic completely, right? Because right now we have people that are like, oh, I'm pro-Palestine, I'm pro-Ukraine, or I'm this and but if you make people understand why they are the two fronts of the same war, you're going to get a way different understanding of this conflict, and people are going to completely change their ideas about it. They can't have.
At that point, it's a world war. It's just a prelude. It's like the phony war.
I get this question every once in a while on interviews or in spaces. When is World War III going to start? Bitch, what? It started in 2023. Were you awake back then when the Ukrainian counteroffensive failed and the Europeans and the Americans started freaking out? When do I think World War III is going to start? Yesterday when you woke up. Like, what are you talking about?
I would even go back to 2014, the overthrow of the government in Yanukovych. I mean, that's the spark, right?
Just insanity.
Yeah. The attack on Iran the attack on Qatar.
The World War, guys. The history books told me it was like crazy. It happened in like 5 weeks. There were bombs everywhere. We're not in a world war. That's how these people think.
Also, I think they miss too that a lot of the wars that take place are color revolutions now, where it's not
exactly that. Or there are different types of war. There's war for their education system. There's economic war.
Yeah,
There's
hyper conflicts.
Exactly.
And the goal
Nepal is another front in this war. The Philippines is another front in this war. Armenia, Azerbaijan is another front in this war. People are not getting it. They're not getting it.
These fires are not being started by coincidence. And there are strategies that are being employed by China with this notion of expansion, with the U.S. taking actions to try to prevent that online expansion, that on-land corridors and whatnot in order to get their goods from point A to point B. No, I agree with you. This is a prelude to a larger conflict. I guess the catch becomes, does the U.S. government collapse before then? Does the European governments collapse before then? If not, this is only going to get worse.
Oh, it's going to get way worse.
Sarah Bils, you are fantastic.
Thanks, guys. I will see you on Sunday.
See you on Sunday. DD Geopolitics, check her out, especially on Twitter. They do fantastic work. And again, there are some people I say that about who I mean it tepidly. This is not one of those cases. You guys actually really do good work. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank
you. Good one, okay? Enjoy the rest of your day and tell your dog hi. All right. We have come to the end. I saw a fight in the chat that had me falling out laughing. Where was it? It was DD Geopolitics. I said, I just saw, don't tell me how to speak ever. I speak 3 languages. It's like, fuck yeah. Right on. Like, don't tell me how to talk. I say what I want. We've come to the end. We have Red Dye 40, wishing you happiness and prosperity. Thank you. Thank you, Red Dye 40. I appreciate that. Back at you, man. Back at you. I don't know if you're a man, I'm just saying man in the colloquial sense. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Who me? What is this? I don't fight in the chat, Jamal. Arcane Eclectic. I did not see the fight. I didn't see it. I saw one person's comment, but I didn't know the context of the comment. Woman, I see you, Sabs. Sabs? Who's Sabs? Sometimes the thing goes by so fast, I don't get the chance to see everything that you guys are saying. But look, as I've told you before, you guys help make this show what it is. You have my deepest appreciation for doing so. The show often gets demonetized. So, Sabby Sab, she's in the chat? No way! Sabby is here? Sabs from that channel. Oh, I didn't know Sabby. I didn't see her. By the way, Sabby Sabs has a fantastic show. She has a fantastic show. She commands the microphone in a way that is greatly impressive. Every so often, every random blue moon, I would do segments. And, you try to make sure the segment is a capsule that you can effectively make into another thing. So like yesterday when I did the capsule on Killer Meat and I did the one on all 3 did well. That being said, I do have a tendency sometimes, if I'm not concrete and clear in what I want to do, where it can blur in a way that it's like, okay, I can't use this. Sabs has it down to science. She has it down to science. She is fantastic. So definitely check Sabby out. She has a great show. I don't remember the times it comes on. Usually I just randomly catch it when I see it. But she has a damn good show. So definitely check out Sabby Sabs. She's awesome. All right. Just don't over-speculate in the chat, Douglas Miller. Oh, over-speculate. Somebody's over-speculating. All right. I am going to call this a day. I've read all the chats. I thank all of you for joining me. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. You can support this content. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, Buy Me a Coffee, all of those good things. All of it helps to make this content what it is. And you have my deepest appreciation for it. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? maybe there's one more thing. Didn't get the chance to show this, but it made my day, so it may make your day too. And we'll close on this. It is an Israeli soldier
you suggest is
being put in his place by a Chinese guy. And the Chinese, who is this guy? The Chinese gentleman is Yang Zitong. And there's a military officer called Elad Shoshan. Zitong is from the international relations at Tsinghua University. Apparently, this is one of the most prestigious universities in China, at the very least, going by what the gentleman is saying. The English is a bit tortured in this, but the guy from China is taking no shit off of this guy at all. And at one point, even it's like, dude, you're pushing propaganda. He just tells him flat out, I don't care about your propaganda. You're full of it. You're effectively lying. This conversation was great.
the real reason of this war is that this is the terror organization Hamas that's still holding our hostages. So they replaced the UN.
StreamYard, dude, what are you doing with the code base? You are fucking up the code base big time. Let's try this one more time. I'm a software engineer, so I know when somebody does an update and fucks up the code base because you can see it in the way the application works. Let's try this one more time. Israeli soldier having a conversation with Chinese professor at a university or international relations of Shisheng University. He does not come out of this well.
The real reason of this war is that this is the terror organization Hamas that's still holding our hostages. So they replace the UN. You suggest is sound very smart between countries. What we need to do about the terror organization?
My answer is very clear. Yeah, your military people should shoot the terrorists, not the children, not the women. When you shoot the children and the women, and you lack legitimacy to carry out any actions in that reason. For instance, and when we have the robbers get in the bank, they rob the bank, they use the staff and the customer as a human shield. You're a policeman. If you do not kill the staff, bank staff, and the customer, you cannot catch the robbers. How can you do it? Do you think you should kill the customer and the staff first?
We really do all what we can not to hurt the citizens.
To kill more than 70,000 civilians.
No,
there are more than the terrorists.
It's not fact, right?
Okay.
Really?
The fact is not decided by you. The facts decided by the international community. It's not decided by your government. Your government have no legitimacy and the right to decide or defend what is fact.
Okay. The terror attack, the terror organization, what the solution in your way of...
My solution is that go to the UN, work with the UN, and agree the two-state solution to establish a state of Palestine. Then you have two states, and you can work together with the Palestinians together to fight against terrorists. If you do not work with the Palestinians together, you can never win the war over terrorists.
But this specific war will end when the terror organization will release all our hostages and will give up his weapon, because we can't stop the war as long as we have the hostages.
No, this kind of a propaganda have too many. No one believe it.
I love that. I love that. This propaganda, nobody believes you. Nobody believes you. Oh, I love that. And just shuts them down immediately. Nobody believes what you are saying out of your mouth right now. Because Israel has a Hannibal directive. The Hannibal directive is effectively, if we need to kill hostages, as opposed to them being hostages, we would do that. Meaning, if it's between that guy dying, that's a soldier, versus that guy being taken hostage, it is okay for that guy to die. So when you have the hostages that are starving to death in prison, Israel is perfectly okay with those people starving to death. You're starving to death for the state of Israel, as opposed to us having to make some kind of negotiation to get you back. It is perfectly okay if you die. That is the way they look at it. That is the way they're operating. So this idea that, well, they have to give up the hostages and they have to give up the weapons and they have to do, shut up right now. Nobody takes you seriously on this. You have no credibility on this issue. And 70,000 is a lowball number. Francesca Albanese has pointed out that that number is probably around 680,000, with 300,000 being children under the age of 5, effectively babies. You've been murdering babies en masse. That is what you've been doing as a government. Nobody accepts the nonsense that is coming out of your government in regards to numbers, short of the idiot in the White House, that troglodyte who has been backing and supporting genocide, effectively rape, murder, torture, etc. I love the fact that that's the way he handled that. It was very clear. You have no legitimacy. I don't care about your propaganda. Basically, shut up. Fantastic. 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 I don't know who that guy is, but I love that guy. He's my new favorite person for today. That's my new favorite person for today. No, you didn't, Aziz. Don't tell me that. I actually saw a stupid Iranian on YouTube saying that the Israelis care about its citizens. He's one of them, and he wants Israel, U.S. boats on Iran's side. Boots on Iran's side. That guy is a fucking idiot if he thinks that. He is a complete idiot if he thinks that. Look, Qatar got his N-word wake-up call. I don't know if you guys have heard that term, N-word wake-up call. It's like somebody has been thinking that they were something special, and they weren't. I've made this analogy before. Cop pulls over a car. 2 black people, 1 Hispanic, white guy in the car. Cop says, "Hey, you N-words, get out the car." The 2 black guys get out the car. Hispanic stays in the car. And the cop says, "Didn't I tell you to get out the car?" Looking at the Hispanic. Meaning, Qatar went with this idea, or Qatar went with this idea that there's something special. We're unique. Hey, I know you've been murdering Muslims, Arabs for the last 2 years. What goes back for 75 years. I know you've been doing that, and you've been doing that prolifically, right? If murdering babies was something that you can get a gold medal for, Israel will have several at this point. They're prolific at murdering women and children and starving people and raping people in their prisons, with the majority of the public saying this is fair game. Qatar is not different. They believed themselves to be different. They believed themselves to be precious flowers that in no way would ever get hit because the U.S. backs them. They give the United States billions of dollars. They work with the United States to overthrow the government of Syria, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Blah, blah, blah. When it comes down between you and Israel, you don't matter. And what Donald Trump is trying to instantiate in the Abraham Accords is effectively Israeli dominance of that region. So for the people who think that this is a tail wagging the dog, I'm sorry, it's not. For the people who look at the articles and say, "Oh my God, Donald Trump is complaining behind the scenes," you are being played. This is U.S. policy being enacted in the Middle East with the United States using Israel as its tip of the spear in order to enact that policy. I suspect that the rest of the global South and the rest of the world knows that, which is why the Chinese guy was so aggressive at shutting down the nonsense that was coming out of that Israeli soldier. We do everything in our power not to kill civilians. Really? You do a horrible job at it then, if that's true. When your soldiers are murdering babies and laughing at it, that doesn't seem like you're doing everything in your power. When you're using drones to drop bombs on kids, it doesn't seem, at least according to my vision and the way that I, look at the world and see reality for the reality that it is, that many of these people are even putting on video because they're proud of it. You're murdering women and children. You're committing a genocide. You're the closest thing to Nazis that we have in our modern era. Put it in context. And I would imagine that the Nazis also would say, well, we had to do so-and-so, and we do everything in our power to not kill Jews, or we do everything in our power not to kill Russian civilians. And they would have been lying through their teeth also. Degenerates, just fucking monsters. I love the fact that that monster got shut down. That needs to happen more often. And unfortunately, in the US media, they would inject some rando Israeli saying something and they would run with it as if it was some take on reality. Fortunately, for all of the people and for all of the criticisms of social media, if it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't have this bird's eye view of the massacres, the kids having their bodies blown apart, the women and children, the ghostly figures that are walking through Gaza graveyard, skeletal, because they're effectively no food in their bodies, or for that matter, dropping out of dehydration or dropping out of starvation. If it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't be able to have clarity on that. And Twitter, or TikTok, I should say, will now be owned by a bunch of pro-genocide goons who just so happen to have a lot of money that is going to be able to purchase 80% of TikTok. TikTok will now be part of a state apparatus that will be used to inject propaganda into the United States. The ADL made a very specific point that they wanted to get their hands on TikTok. That TikTok was the problem. TikTok was showing so many images of Israelis committing massacres and atrocities, and we need to get our hand on TikTok so they won't put those atrocities on TikTok. As a point of fact, many of those atrocities were put on by Israeli soldiers themselves, just like those lunatics that were in Syria, that, you know, these terrorist dogs who were going through ethnically cleansing Alawites, Christians, Shia. They had zero issue murdering all of these people and was proud of the fact that they were murdering people. And so, despite being animals, they knew how to operate cameras. And they would videotape themselves beating children, beating human beings, dragging women away for some kind of slavery. I'm saying the Israelis are the same type of monsters that those filthy animals were in Syria that was effectively doing that stuff. And they were also recording themselves on these platforms as they were going about committing atrocities. So for all of this talk about, oh my God, we have to get our hands on TikTok in order to stop. Hey, maybe make it an order, kind of like Jelani made the order saying, I understand you're going to commit atrocities. Can you please just not put it on camera? And half of your issues would have went away. But they're going to have their hands on TikTok. And so all things being equal, you are going to get a propagandized version of some kind of platform where they are going to inject just nonsense, as opposed to on some level of reality that you were getting prior. Yeah. All right, let's end this because at this point I've gone too long. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you guys for joining me for the show. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. We're going to have Laith. Dan Kovalik has a book on Syria and the collapse of Syria. He's going to go through his book, so that should be pretty good. And there was somebody else. There's somebody else. So many people on vacation this week. This was a difficult week to book. But the numbers weren't too bad. Yeah, I need to find somebody for 8 o'clock. All right. Let's call it a day. You guys are fantastic. I will see you bright and early. I tried to get Carl Jai. He those schedule conflicts. There were schedule conflicts. But I'll hit him up to see whether he can come on next week. If I can get him on, I'll try to get what is his name? I can't think of his name. I can see him, I can't think of his name. Get Ken O'Keefe. I don't know who Ken O'Keefe is. I'll look him up, but I don't know who he is. I'm sure China has the TikTok receipts. I got to be honest with you, man. I kind of agree with Margaret Kimberley. Like, between allowing some rando Zionists to take, or let's say being bullied by the United States, I just took it away. Just okay. It just won't operate here in the United States. And allow the president of the United States to deal with 100 million kids who are very pissed off at him that he got rid of TikTok in the United States. And all the propaganda in the world was not going to be able to put a Band-Aid on that, considering the anger that was going to be coming out of the public on this issue. But they wanted to make a buck. What is this? Communism with Chinese characteristics, whatever the hell that means. But yeah. You guys have a fantastic day. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe, and I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Be safe and be kind to the degree that you can be kind. Have a good one all.